days and whatnot. How's everybody? How's things going? Get your. Do you participate in the Black Friday or? Uh,
I don't participate in Black Friday. And I celebrated a birthday recently. I turned 39. So, everything is going well. I'm very happy about where I am at in my life.
well, you have to be very happy with what's going on in your life. You just put that 39 right out there. It's like, yeah, I just turned 39.
I mean,
Yeah,
cause
yeah.
when I was younger, I didn't think I was gonna be 39. I ain't know. I didn't think I was gonna live this long.
Imagine how I feel every morning. Okay.
It's a blessing. I can only imagine. I want to live old enough to be. I want to live older than you. My great grandmother lived to be 94, 95. So I'm hoping to live long enough to see the changes go on through the generations.
Well, my goal is 101, and we'll see how that works out. So,
I think you'll do good. And as long my thing is I want to grow older, but I want to still be vibrant. I don't want to grow older and then be, miserable.
well, that's kind of the reason for this program. you know, I see Mr. Scott is also here. Good evening, Mr. Scott. How are you doing?
Greetings, greetings. Doing very good. Very chilly up here right now. I trying to make
Ah,
plans to go down to one of you two folks' way. I'm sure it's a lot more hospitable
well,
in those areas.
It
uh,
was it was cold the other day down here in Atlanta.
Yeah,
well,
well, I will take your cold over our cold. I didn't even go outside today.
Right.
I didn't even venture out at all. I
well,
looked out the window.
unfortunately, your Vikings should have also took your advice. And they played inside in the dome. I mean, they no. Well, anyway, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that at the proper time.
Well,
Uh,
next Thursday there'll be a showdown with you past your use by day quarterback is going to be here in Minnesota next Thursday. So,
yeah, well, we'll talk about Kirk Cousins and anybody that loses to Detroit. At least tied them. I mean,
but
come on,
I will definitely lean towards your coach on Thursday. I'll take your coach for Thursday's matchup.
yeah, a lot of them will take our coach, but um, I was kind of hoping that. I could get a couple of attorneys on. I reached out to Mr. Martin, who is also up there in your Twin Cities, Mr. Scott. Miss Sims will probably be on a little bit later. And I find it very easy um, that a lot of people say that they want to talk about things, but when you give them an opportunity, it always seems like it's kind of like the tar baby situation. Well, I don't want to get stuck, but I do have an opinion. Okay, so one of the questions that I asked a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the Rittenhouse case was where were the presence of protesters? And after looking back upon it a little bit, I'm like, okay, well, the Rittenhouse case was kind of a white on white crime. So maybe that's, because we know exactly what would have happened if it had been black on black or black on white crime. We know there would have definitely been a different outcome to this. But then right after that, the next day after that verdict was given, one of the groups that we have had here on the show before, the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, the same gun club that showed up at the Aubrey neighborhood earlier protesting, and they showed up there armed, of course, and there was no police presence or anything to tell them to get out of the neighborhood like they were trying to chase Mr. Aubrey out of the neighborhood. In fact, there was no police presence at all. None of the neighbors came out out on the lawn, talking about get out of here. So none of that. They didn't try to chase none of those black people out of the neighborhood. So I looked at the Aubrey trial, as I said, and the next day you had this. I want to say show of force. At least you know that we're here. In fact, so much that the same defense lawyer that was talking about these black pastors also brought up that the fact that we had protesters outside walking around the courthouse and so forth should be grounds for mistrial. So I thought to myself, is this an effective way to show our discord, but also reflecting upon history when you had the Black Panther organization out there with a show of force, as well as, you're just not going to come in here and put your foot on our neck. So, what do you think that this particular show of force should be a regular part of these types of trials? For instance, I don't think we still haven't heard anything about the trials of the police concerning Breonna Taylor. I haven't heard anything
That's
about
probably
that.
gonna be a while.
Yeah. Well, I
They're,
mean,
they're gonna stall as long as they can. Okay, so the first thing that I would say, as far as with the case down in Brunswick, uh, when you have a case that's really solid against you, I think that the narrative is to try to do anything that you can to throw off the jury or whoever the fact finder or the judge of the trial is. So and I'm saying this from, like, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm literally in the middle of a lawsuit right now, and the evidence is so overwhelming against the government that they are doing anything. They're looking at technical issues to try to get the case thrown out. It's not that they have an argument of what happened, but they're trying to argue how it happened. So normally they will, when they can't fight the case based on facts, they will do anything, throw the book at whatever they can, because that's where you got your immunity at. So even though these are civilians, when you're dealing with white people, it's almost like not dealing with civilians sometimes, because they have the law on their side. So at that point, I think those attorneys, defense attorneys, were very desperate. So they were doing anything to try to sway the predominantly white jury in their favor.
uh, Mr. Scott, what's your thoughts on that?
Well,
You have a little less militant attitude than some of us, like Mr. Tucker and
well,
I. But uh,
as far as the we're talking about the Georgia Aubrey thing, right?
yes,
Yeah, and as I've said earlier, my feeling on that is that this guy, their lawyer, told them. He said, "Look, we've been getting white folks off from killing black people for hundreds of years, but you dummies go out and video it and show people and throw it up. Well, there ain't nothing much we can do for you." See, because if there hadn't been video, if there hadn't been where the other eyes can see this would have been just another. I really believe that they would have said he was trying to rob something. They saw him go in there. They'll say that they witnessed this, but because of that video, I mean, I think the lawyer just threw up his hands. He just let that guy testify, and he hung himself really by what he said. So, I mean, let's face it. They have been getting off with crimes, and I mean, in the old days when they had the lynchings and they hung black people, they would take pictures, send postcards, smile, and have body parts there and send that out. So you saw these people, but they were never charged. They were never brought to any kind of justice. So I think the one in Georgia is a small step. I think that when we see the cameras, even though they still are going to try to say you didn't see what you thought you saw, They're still going to try to make you believe that on these cases. So I'm really anxious to see the case up here with the Potter case, where she killed this young man, thought she brought out her taser, and said she made a mistake. You know, a 25-year veteran officer, supervisor, didn't know the difference between a taser and her gun. So I'm really curious to see how this one comes out. Because this has a potential to have more protests, more, depending on how this goes. This is going to be very interesting. And I think it's televised on maybe like court TV. It's not, doesn't have the full, at least maybe because they haven't started yet. Maybe we'll be able to view that case too, because I'm very interested to see how that comes out.
Well, the Aubrey case was actually on an offshoot station, HLNB, something like that. See, I think a lot of it's the station where they usually show like the forensic files and places like
Yeah, they're
shows
connected
like
with
that.
CNN. That's like a
Right,
knockoff
right,
CNN station.
right. They had the Aubrey trial, and MSNBC and CNN had the Rittenhouse trial. Um, but strangely enough, there wasn't a lot of coverage for the Aubrey trial um, on Fox News as there was for the Rittenhouse trial. Um, and
They got to play to their audience. You know that they got
Not
to,
entirely.
because you can't really, you can't justify the way they killed that man running, you know what I'm saying, like chasing him down and all that. It's a lot harder to justify that than what Rittenhouse done. And like you said before, it's a white on white crime, so people are looking at it differently on the black side and on the white side.
now I'm going to kind of combine things here, and I know it might be a matter of state law, but you know, Dr. Casey, you've dealt with federal law. Uh, I've dealt with federal law on the criminal side, but you know, I know, like as you say, uh, they can get as technical as the time stamp. Maybe you were supposed to have your papers in by 1 o'clock, and you got them in at 1:03. Doesn't
I,
matter whether
I'm
you,
I'm using
doesn't
that
matter whether you
very
were
argument.
standing. Doesn't matter whether you were standing in line. You
Uh-uh.
know, at,
Listen. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Right now, that is one of my arguments because the government, they turned in their papers like the day after the day that the judge ordered it to be due. And although I have very numerous other arguments about the documentation, that is definitely one of them because y'all was late.
right. See,
And,
yeah,
but I'm playing the game that they play on
right.
people when the shoe is on the other foot.
Right, right. Like I said, I mean, I haven't been on the other side. I know it's like, and I've used some of those technicalities myself, and hey, money is one of them. But but getting back to the basic premise here, and I have to start with you, Mr. Scott, because
Sure.
you always tell us about your background as far as dealing with parents and dealing with kids, and I understand that we're not talking about toddlers here, but in the Rittenhouse case, he was 17 when his mother took him across state lines with this weapon, so forth and so on. This young man in Michigan, I believe, is what, 15,
Yeah.
and his parents are buying him basically a Glock for Christmas. Okay. So once again, you can't tell me that these parents don't know that their children have guns in their house. See, that whether
No.
it be whether it be in the ghetto, whether we're talking about whatever neighborhood we're talking about, these parents know that their children are armed. Some of them, as this example, arm them themselves. But there seems to be, this was something that I asked quite a few weeks ago. In Michigan, they're charging the parents. They're saying you knew the situation. We called and advised you of the situation, and you did nothing. Now, I thought that the mother of Rittenhouse should also be held responsible. Now, uh, Mr. Scott, is there any type of law in your state? I know there is in the state of Ohio when it comes to children and services, and I believe there's one out here about having unsafe conditions for your children.
Well, James, what seems to be coming out here as we listen to these cases and things is that these different states work differently. These different states have their own laws, they have their own protocols, and they are really honed in on doing what they think. You know, another thing about the kid in Michigan, he's been charged with everything. He's been charged with just having the gun. He's been charged with just bringing the gun into the school. He's been charged with multiple offenses where they didn't charge Rittenhouse with anything. They didn't charge him for having the gun. He's underage. He's coming to this thing with a rifle with intent to use it, and he didn't get charged with any of that. The judge, which was a slanted judge, I mean, come on, this judge was biased as hell. He's telling, we can't even call the people killed victims. See, so what he minimized that they were protesting, they were out there so they can be discarded. He didn't really seem to give those victims, people that were killed and the guy that was shot, any type of justice. But in the one in Michigan, well, he killed kids in the community. Okay, he killed some kids in the community and disrupted their whole thing. And I don't know if you know about that area, Southfield in Oakland, Michigan, is one of the a lot of old car money is there. And in fact, my sister teaches at a school out at Oakland, Michigan, right out in that area, and it's a very, very well-to-do type area. So not only are they charging him and the parents, they're looking for other people. They're actually going to see if there were other people that knew about this and they're involved in it, and they're doing a clean sweep on that one. And so, what to me that shows is the differences in how they treat these cases in different states and different jurisdictions. You can do things in Michigan you can't do in Minnesota. You can do things in this state that you can't do in that state. And I think it's that I guess that's the purpose of having the feds come in.
Well, and that's another thing that you kind of uh, uh, it seems like there was no type of federal intervention in this Rittenhouse case. Usually, there's some type of follow up, civil rights, or something
It,
like that.
I
Go
think
ahead.
that's going to depend on what the prosecutors decide and or the family members of the victims. Now, I do want to point out that in the Rittenhouse, when it turned to riots, if you, I mean, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the books about John Brown, but in those books, they talk about how literally whenever there was a revolt by blacks or Native Americans, they were authorized to go and help disperse the riot. That's what a part of their culture and heritage has been. You know, period. So you think that it should apply, it really, I don't think it has to do with the state laws as much as it has to do with the values and the principles of the people that's in charge. Because if you look at those, the way the laws have been written to protect the United States and anybody that's going to protect it, like the Capitol riot, that's not really insurrection because it's not black people doing it.
There you go. There you go.
And just like with Rittenhouse, if that was a black person, well, it kind of varies with what they'll allow and how they'll allow things to be handled now. A black person is going to definitely get a little bit harder, hammer than what Rittenhouse got. But when it turned into them being rioters, they automatically viewed it the same. That's why they didn't want them to be called victims, because in his defense, I'm protecting because they're rioting. I'm trying to protect so in that instance, when you're dealing with a riot, they're not looking at it like victims. That's why they wasn't called victims, because it was a riot. So
Yeah,
the state prosecutors have the discretion to say, how are we going to charge him? And then federal prosecutors, depending on what they saw in the case, can also go and charge them. But normally the prosecutors was going to push that on to the feds. But that's not going to happen, because guess what? It's white on white crime, and they was rioting, and he was protecting whatever he felt like the next state couldn't do for themselves.
yeah.
But see,
And,
you know, but
but when you throw black people into the mix, what's really happening? Just like you're saying, we have a caste system. Okay, in this caste system, I'm reading this book, Warmth of Other Suns, which just runs down everything. And she also has a book. I can't think of her name right now. I should have the book here with me. But this caste system is an unspoken thing where we are still considered second class. No matter where we are, they still look at the black people like they are in charge. I mean, look at everything, every city you have. Now, it's interesting to me, some of the southern cities, like for one, Jackson, Mississippi, is probably 75, 80% black. Their police force is about all black, and they're able to run smoothly. They're able
You
to
know what,
run in
Mr.
their
Scott?
area. Yeah.
I honestly believe that they do that because if we really realize that we are more than likely indigenous to the land, then the control that we have had to deal with over us will diminish, because we will realize that we have rights that will not be addressed in the Constitution, but the Constitution is written to kind of disregard the rights of the people of the land that were here first, that were massacred and, like put through hell for them to reign. It's crazy because it's a lot of mental manipulation going on, and we are distracted just enough not to realize it with TV, with all of the extra stuff. Like, a lot of times when we are distracted by something going on in trials or politics, it'd be something real big also happening behind the scenes that is not getting the big attention, like the what's his name, Epstein,
Epstein.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
case getting no
Yeah.
light, but they dropping names over there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got you. It's like a smoke and mirror sometimes when you're dealing with between the media and the government, and those that got the most money to control it. They want you to see what they want you to see, and they try to hide what they want to. You know what I'm saying? Keep undercover, because man, if we really woke up to that, we're not all from Africa, and all of our ancestors wasn't shipped here, but some of them resided here, I think it would have changed the dynamic of what we know as society today.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that's
Uh,
a heck of a point.
Mr. Scott, you wrote a book, and you can tell us a little bit about that. And I want to know, when you were going through the history and learning about some of the people that you write about. Did you come across some of those maybe parts of forbidden history that you weren't able to put in the book?
Well, I guess the new book is more, Minnesota's black community, the 21st century. But what we've done is we've also reprinted my father's three books going back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s in the black communities here in Minnesota. And what you'll see in his books is he'll take it through some of the first black settlers, he does a big thing on the Dred Scott case, where his family was supposedly enslaved and was brought up to Minnesota to Fort Snelling by one of the military people. And so he said Minnesota is a free state. So he sued. Just got sued for his freedom. And the court put down a landmark decision that says you're a slave no matter where you go. You are a slave no matter because you're here. You are still owned by that army man. And that case stood. And that was happening right here in Minnesota. And
Yeah.
that case really stood up until the pretty much the 50s, 1950s, 1960s. That
But
was
see, now we learned about things like that in school.
yeah,
Nowadays, if you try to teach that in high school, they say that you're, inflicting critical race theory on our children. But I remember learning about that decision in school. It was one of the landmark decisions.
same here.
It was uh, actually before Roe versus Wade, but I remember the Civil Rights Act and some of the things that led up to that. I remember reading about Dr. Martin Luther King and Reverend Abernathy while I was in high school. I mean, uh, we were given specific assignments. I remember when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. I mean, these are things that we were taught.
Yeah.
Nowadays, these people are seen to be put in a different light, and that's why I was asking you about your book, because a lot of books that are written by black people are not necessarily reflective of the history of the people themselves, but are a reflection of what the white community benefited as
Mm,
a result of
mm.
us being integrated into society, which is why I hate that word integration. I also hate the word inclusion, but those are different.
Buzzwords. What,
You know,
what I say about critical race theory
ne-
to me is
Negro is another word that really absolutely like makes me. But anyway, uh, go ahead, Mr. Scott.
but what I'll say about critical race theory is what they want to change the narrative. I mean, they want to give you the King James version. Okay, they want of history. They want to give you the King James version. They don't want to really lay this out there. Like when we was coming up, like you say, James, and I was in school, I learned those type of things. And I think what my dad's books wanted to do is to say that basically, I think his main theme was we're better than you say we are. And we know that we're better than you say we are. And that's why when you pick up those books and you see all kinds of black people doing anything you could think of, medical schools, attorneys, driving a bus, doing their own business, just working, doing a factory job, just see, these are things that we need to impart. I still believe on the youth coming up that there's got to be some mentality that says there's a reason that you're going to go to school. They have to have a reason to go to it. They have to they have to change their curriculum to today's world. And this is one of the things that critical race and these things are trying to keep us back. They're doing so many things now, like exonerating people that have been in prison for 50 years for shit they didn't do. I mean, now how is that going to? I mean, you know, took 50 years of this man's life, and now for something he didn't do, and they do
And
things.
and and you do
Well, one
not
other
want
thing
to
I
pay
want to
him.
say, they're trying to now give a pardon to Marcus Garvey. They're throwing that out there. We should I mean, one of the greatest historical businessman figures that stood up for our people. And so I think we really got to be vigilant on what's going on in these schools and what's going on with our education and what's going on with us. I mean, we need to strategize somehow. And I think in those days when you had a king, Abernathy, and you seem to have some spirit and some cohesiveness that had some respect. And, and one more thing on that is this minister, this judge, that said he didn't want the black pastors at the trial. He didn't want the black pastors. because what that says is the black church historically has been something that we have had control over. We've had, that's one thing that we could say we've had control over is the black church. And so that shows that there is some power there, and that they're still looking at us with a side eye to see what are we going to do, because they know that they've been wrong all these years. They know that they've been wrong for all the things that have happened to black people over generations.
Now, Mr. Scott, you've been here a lot of last month where we discussed the black church and how it is, well, to my mind, done a whole lot to bamboozle and have a lot to do with the reason why we are in the current state of affairs. Uh, as just because it's a black church, as Mr. Tucker says, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. So, Miss Sims, glad that you were able to join us tonight.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We were kind of discussing the Rittenhouse case, and I, as usual, have things all kind of jumbled up here together because I kind of think that they overlap. We were talking about the Rittenhouse case, and we were talking about the Aubrey trial, and I was. Uh, my first question was, as I had posed to another question, another program that you were on, is the effectiveness of the protest groups. The protest group at the Aubrey trial was a chapter of the Huey Newton Gun Club. They were all armed, and they had a presence there. And as you heard, one of the attorneys said he thought it should be grounds for mistrial. But do you think, how effective do you think that it is to have such protest, or do you think that I mean,
Well, I,
one of the things that does concern me is a possible outbreak, of violence, but I do think that we need, just as the Proud Boys and all of these other extremist groups show up. I think we should also show up and showing a similar show of force. But then again, I'm one of those guys, so maybe you have a different you have a different take on it.
well, I think, like I've said before, you have two environments. You have the judicial environment inside the courtroom, and you have outside the courtroom. I think all that the defense attorneys, et cetera, what he said was still part of a strategy in terms of getting people whipped up in regards to winning his side of the case. And I think I came on at the end of what Mr. Scott was saying in regards to how the Church of Black people were thought of. That's all. I agree with a lot of that, but in this particular case, I think it was part of the strategy of getting people uh, whipped up in regards to him winning the side of the case, because as he was talking, a lot of people didn't even know the presence of who was in the pastors or who was in the courtroom, but he needed to bring attention to the general public of who was in the courtroom. And he knew the reaction would be that the pastors would come, which they should have done. And so his side, wherever he was coming from, would win the argument and get people whipped up enough to do what they did. And I'm glad they didn't take it any further. I didn't realize that the Black Panthers, etc., were there. Also, I didn't hear that, but I think it was still part of the strategy to win. It's a competition in there to win his side of the argument, and he would go any means necessary. That means putting other people's lives on the line and getting people whipped up. He was willing to do.
And kind of to get you caught up, we were also talking about the parents' responsibility. Uh, when you see what's happening in Michigan, I mean, Michigan is charging the parents. They're talking about possibly even charging the school, and they're taking a real hardcore line. Do you think that perhaps this was a 15-year-old kid given a firearm by his parents? We have Rittenhouse at 17. Uh, his mother taking him across state lines with a loaded weapon. Do you think it is time that we give parents more responsibility when their children commit these types of acts? I mean, if uh, little
Well,
Jimmy down there at the corner, had shot Sharonda, we'd have a whole different conversation.
right, and a lot of times people refer to black on black crime, which doesn't make sense because any community that you live in, sadly, there's going to be crime. But one of the
It's
things
kind
that
of
I
like
think is,
I
one
call
of the
it
things that,
poor on poor crime. No such thing as color. It's poor on poor. It could be black on black, white
yeah,
on
yeah,
white, green
It's
on
it's
green.
yeah,
helping
yeah.
poor
One
against
of
the
the
break.
one of the
Poor against the break.
characteristics one of the characteristics of white on white crime is that the crimes take place in schools and other public arenas, and a lot of people are killed. And I think one of the things that has happened is that the white population has gotten tired and to the point of having their kids killed, and justly so, of having their loved ones and other children's being murdered inside schools, etc., etc. And they're coming forth and pressing the issues. And there are statutes and laws already out there in regards to my understanding and listen to some of the broadcasts and stuff, that there are rules and regulations, etc., already out there making parents accountable to their underage children, etc., etc. And people are willing to now go the limit and say enough is enough.
Mr. Scott, you say you have relatives out there. Where was the metal detector? I mean, how does this kid walk into school with a gun in his
I don't think they
backpack?
had any.
All schools don't have metal detectors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
No,
sometimes it. I
I
mean,
mean,
in black communities, yes. In
yeah, I mean,
non-black communities, they don't have metal detectors like that.
hey,
I mean, it should
I
be
mean,
standard at this point, but
don't they cost the same? I mean,
no,
if you get
Yeah, but
when
that's
this
you
not
kid
put
how
was
it
giving them
works.
signals. This kid was giving them signals. This kid was making drawings. This kid was saying, "I need help." They call the parents to come to the school, and he's got this backpack, and nobody looks in it. Nobody looks in the backpack or tells him to go home or go get some treatment or go to the hospital and get him out of the
his
school.
parents gave him the gun. It was a Christmas present. His
Yeah,
parents
they gave
gave
him
him
the
the
gun.
gun. He's
Well, that's why
15.
that's
He's
why they should be
15
charged.
years old.
That's why they
He's
should be charged too. And overall, parents should be responsible for the kid. I
and
I
I
mean,
think
think
that
it's
it's going to take for white people to really get upset for a lot of changes to happen in America. Up until this point, white people have been in a sense of denial about who is the cause of a lot of this mass chaos and the violence. They
if
act
one
like it does not happen at the hands of white people.
if one of these school shooters had been black, do you think that we would still be talking about it in this same manner?
he'd be
Come on,
dead.
Mr. Scott.
We just had one. No, we just had one. It was a guy, a young man recently that was a black young man that got arrested for shooting at a school. Now we don't know what the outcome is going to be for that, but we'll see. He
we would
lived.
still be, yeah, we would still be talking about it, but in a different manner and a different way. And I think as
Mhm.
the trial
We'd be
goes
talking.
on, a
We'd
lot
be
of
talking
things are
about
going to come
federal
out.
gun laws. We'd be talking about police around the facility to keep his from being lynched. We'd be talking about him possibly the trial would possibly be by TV. Because they would say that it was too dangerous for him to be there, but I'm just it just seems, how
I
easy
think
it
I
is
think I
for
think we part
people
of the
to tolerate.
conversation.
Go ahead, Miss Sims.
Yeah, I think part of the conversation would involve attention being paid to protesters out in the street and possibly destroying businesses, etc., etc. The usual pattern. But one of the difference in dealing with the different cultures, the white cultures went to the power behind the power. Way they went directly to who was responsible. The school, they immediately dealt with it a different way. They went right to the school, and the school, it seems pretty strange the way they dealt with it because they had all the authority that when the parents came to dismiss that child right away, they allowed the parents to keep that child in school for some reason, and we'll find out. And I think I heard the security person talking today, and I think there wasn't any alarm system or whatever. In fact, he was out watering the grass on the athletic field when he heard
The
the
security guy.
alarms. Yeah, when he heard the alarms go off, and he thought they were firecrackers. So even though in different communities and different situations, people are there
They're
doing
more
different
lax.
things, attention, different things, and I think the white culture, a lot of them still believe it can't happen in that it won't happen in their neighborhood, and it does over and over again.
Hmm.
And it's hitting them. It's hitting them hard, and their children. It's hitting their hearts. It's hitting their emotions,
Hmm.
etc., etc. But here again, generally the white population are still in control in regards to various things, so they know who their route of dealing with it is more direct, going straight to the powers that be in dealing with it and shutting it down right there. It's trying to
Right.
shut it down right there, and just like that. Whereas black folk, I feel kind of still helpless in certain situations, and they are out in the street doing, and their hearts are hurting, but they're out in the street, enacting how they're feeling emotionally, etc., etc. Two different ways, same similar scenario, but two different ways of reacting to it and dealing with it.
Yeah, so black people they pop off sooner than later when white people are more likely to allow it to fester. But they're not controlling it. The school shootings by the hands of white Americans have not subsided at any point
Right.
in any
No.
narrative. They are full fledged, and right now, it is sad to say that there will be people that do it just for the sake of clout and getting the attention and the way that the news carries on about it. Some people will do it for that reason more so than because they're actually dealing with something, but a lot of them get issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, I
And
think this one was
what's so
really I think it's kind of crossed over because, like I was saying earlier, they killed their kids. They killed in their community. And I think that that is a huge, huge thing. Like you're saying, they're going to react right away because this is a situation that potentially, now I don't think it'll happen, but they could say he's mentally ill. They could say he's incompetent to go
They'll
to trial.
probably use it.
They'll
You know,
probably
them defenses is gonna come out.
with some psychological things and say, well, he's going to go to treatment. He's going to go to a, I don't know, some type of facility for treatment. But this one is really, it really hits home to them. There's no question about it because that disrupts their community. When you send your kids to school and they can get killed, and
It
then
polarizes the reality of white America.
it does. It shows them that why, what did you do to make this happen? So that I believe the school is going to be culpable. The parents, they already have them in jail, and they're still looking for other people, as we've been saying. So this is kind of a real test case to see how this is going to be handled.
and very sadly, as I think about it, there's some other 15-year-olds with their thinking and how they imagine things out there, possibly planning to do something similar.
Of
But
because
you
of
got a
what
course.
he's
lot of
seen
those
and
video
reactions
games and
and
stuff that
stuff.
feed
Yeah,
into that.
yeah,
This is
right,
this is where,
right.
like, I don't think that video games control people, but when you have a lot of these white kids, it's all they're doing is getting, if they're getting bullied at school and then they're going home and playing these wild, violent, like extremely violent video games, then it is making them think that if they do this and they see that there is no repercussion in the system, then they have no reason to not do it. So right now, I think the precedence is being set for how things are going to proceed forward. In the past, it was cool, and whatever they decide to do right now next is going to determine what happens in the future. Because if you will keep allowing it to happen and you keep giving them excuses, it's like for every riot that has ever happened at the hands of what, every massacre that has ever happened, every time that they lynched or destroyed a black community that was wealthy, all of these things are now going to backfire in their face, because these are the things that they've been doing for years. This is something
Well,
that is their behavior pattern,
that's
and
what
now it's turning on themselves.
but that's that's kind of what my problem is, because it seems that we're still waiting. We're still, I mean, my generation had the same arguments, and Mr. Scott and Miss Sims, I know you can attest to it. We had the same arguments growing up. Where am I going to be able to get a job? I need to get an education. I mean, we had all of they they were a part of our normal life, and it was, you were expected to be given the tools to overcome these obstacles, not having these obstacles paved over for you where you never have to experience life. And I think this is where we have come to now. We don't want to experience life. We want the fruit of life's experiences, but we don't really want to go through life. I mean, those, those things called bumps and bruises, and we want this cosmetically perfect life, and we should be able to uh, follow this path and achieve these goals. Doesn't tell you that there's twists and turns, and you hear about those crossroads on Sunday morning when you go to church, and the reverend wants that collection money. You hear about those crossroads then, but you don't hear about it much more during the rest of the week. So,
I think it's different times, different generations, different conditionings where you're talking about some of the difference between our generation
but I'm talking
and
about the
now's generation.
same problems.
Right,
That's
but
my
we're
point. I'm
dealing
talking
with
about
it.
the
Yeah,
same. I'm talking
It
we're
it
dealing with some
it
different. We're dealing with some
it's
different because you
Christian.
got different
It,
generations and different conditionings of what's going on and how people react. And I think we're coming up against
this is what I call
saying
Christian denial.
way back when a lot of these video games, etc., were coming out, and educators and mental health issues were saying that these allowing your child to absorb all of this day after day, all day long, etc., things will happen, and that's it's playing itself out as being true. Because if you're exposed to something for so long, good or bad, and that's what you see, and you think that's realized, it does have an impact on the way you
But it
think and
doesn't really
process
start
things.
with that though. It starts from, okay, so my theory of Christian denial is something that I've written about, and I think I spoke about it here briefly. But it's using um for white people at this point is their white skin as the privilege that allows them to say, well, nope, it didn't happen, or nope, I can, like pretend like that wasn't that bad, or that didn't happen in that way. And it's something that has kind of trickled down to the black community, to where when you slap Jesus on it, now it's like it never happened. So we are seeing the results of denial over hundreds and hundreds of years. They denied being violent. They denied the massacre of the Native Americans from the Pilgrims, every instance of violence, they act like it didn't really happen and it wasn't that bad. And that is the same thing. This violence is the Neanderthal way. Like this isn't like just because of the video games. No, they've
Right.
had a history of violence
Well,
their
No, I
entire
didn't.
existence.
I didn't mean it in that manner. The way you expose children to and what you expose them to day after day, time after time, has
But we're talking about
impact.
people
No,
that went and hunted people. These are people that could have been committing massacres from their existence of this land. They
See,
have never not created a
and
massacre.
thinking
and the
about
So
people and
undercurrent,
think
but
about people's behaviors. I'm talking about all people. I can't just exclusively point to the
no, we're
Christians or
talking,
just
but we're
one
talking
sect.
okay,
about the
okay,
I'm
white
talking
on
about
yeah,
white
all
crime
over.
and the violence
yeah.
from
but
the
the
school
undercurrent
shooting.
of that, the undercurrent of all of that is our parents, grandparents, before they went through things that we don't even know about. They
Hmm.
had a hard. I'm on a talk tomorrow with the University of Minnesota and the Minnesota Historical Society about what the freeway system has done to the city of Minneapolis. And as I've done research on that, what was done here has been done all over this country. And
Hmm.
All over.
they targeted
Redlining.
redlining, targeted areas for the freeways, and those freeways have become quasi barriers. So you live
Hmm.
on this side of the freeway, you can be on this side. And when I go to Detroit and see my sister, they actually have walls built up all
Yes, yes,
along
they did.
8 Mile. All
Yeah,
along, there's a wall built all
right.
along that. And on one side, your tax base is better. On the other side, you go across the street and the grass is growing all up. There's weeds all on the boulevards. There's
Yeah.
all, and so I have been doing some research just on the freeway part since I have to talk about this tomorrow. And it's we have been so under siege that as kids, even growing up, we didn't really catch the whole brunt of it. We didn't, I had parents, I go to church every
It's
Sunday.
been going on for so long. We've got
It's been,
comfortable with
Let,
it. We've
let,
gotten
it's been
used
going
to it.
on.
let
It's
me,
in a way that systematically, just the freeway. When I just look at that history of that in all these cities, how once you get a prosperous area, black area, well, that's a target, but let's tear that down and move it somewhere else.
Hmm.
but
And
It's
see,
the same
but,
thing that they did to Black Wall Street way back when. They just do it a little different now.
but see, I mean, everybody likes to point to video games and things like that, but Mr. Scott, you brought up a very interesting uh, point, and I'm going to use a good friend that is also a part of my boxing program, and the notorious Freeway Ricky Ross. And that's how he got his name because it was separated and that was where he was supposed to deal.
mhm,
But when you talk about video games, think of the kids that grew up between the 80s and the 90s where crack was prevalent and you saw death on a daily basis if you lived anywhere near Martin Luther King Boulevard, if you lived in the projects called Martin Luther King Boulevard or Abernathy or anything that had a black name behind it, there was a certain environment. And we became tolerable of that environment. We became used to seeing our kids dead in the streets. We became used to seeing women and children being abused because of the crack situation, and yet and still we tolerated it. And you can't say that we didn't tolerate it because once again, we let these people come into our homes. A lot of them were instrumental in the welfare of the home, providing the food, providing, paying the bills, so forth and so on. And maybe you had two or three members in the family strung out, but we tolerated this situation. This was a
We
way
tell,
to
yeah.
this
I
was a
think
way
we,
to appease us.
I think
And
that I think
and if you go to the opioid crisis, We didn't care nothing about the opioid crisis until it started killing white people. Come on, let's be serious. You had a whole town in West Virginia that had 10 times more prescriptions than it had people. If that had been an all black town, the town would have been closed long before that. Come on, the mayor
I think
didn't know, the police department didn't know, none of these people knew. You know, you got a tractor trailer load full of pills coming into your town, and nobody knows. You got your pill truck is more on time than the gas truck coming to your local gas station, and you don't know that anything's wrong. Come on, please.
I think we as black folk and as a society tolerated these things for various reasons. I'm not saying by any means these reasons were justified. It was tolerated out of fear. It was tolerated out of real fear that you yourself, if you spoke up, that your life may have been in danger uh, for very reasons. Money, the money community, the upper echelon allowed it, conditioned us more and more as a people because it was money in it for them. So that's why you get, as you said in West Virginia, that's why you get Wall Street was in on it in that upper 1% because money was coming to them. Money, money, money. And the love of money was over the love of people, the society, the country you say that you love so much you were willing to destroy that or put all that in danger to make the bucks. And that's what happened. I think over time we are now reaping the repercussions of all that was tolerated then and through the years, and it's coming to here again, new generations like Dr. Case and the younger generation, and the thinking of what or whatever. They don't seem to. They seem to be reacting to it differently than what we did. Some of them are willing to if you're out in the street, you're willing, at some level, you're willing to risk your safety and your
You're
life
willing
in
to risk,
dealing with it,
right?
and dealing with it, and not dealing with it. So here again, I think of people's behaviors all across the line, and how we're dealing with things.
But see, I think when you say fear, okay, now maybe things are a little different these days. But when I was a criminal, when I was a crook, I didn't fear the police. If I feared the police, I'd had a damn job. These kids out here now that are selling drugs or that are committing, whatever these felonies are, they don't fear the police. If they feared the police, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. So I think like that to me is an excuse. Now, because like I said, I mean, if you fear something, then you make arrangements not to be, not to come in contact with that. If I fear fire, then I'm not going to be playing with matches. If I'm playing with matches, it's evident that I don't fear fire.
Correct.
I agree with you in terms of the fear factor not being respected or whatever, even not being there. And I just don't mean when I mention video games, it's not just a video game. If you see something over and over, say on TV, and then you look around in your community, and the same thing
Reality,
is going, and the same thing is going on in real life. I mean,
right?
look,
I'm walking
there
past
you
dead
are,
bodies every night. I got shot.
Mm-hmm.
right?
What do you got those things that tell you how many shots were fired in the neighborhood? I mean,
Yeah,
so you know, hey, it's a shot fired. Don't
Some
show
people don't
who.
realize that those things happen until it comes into their area. So that's what we're seeing with these school shootings. And these people are getting mad now because now they're seeing that, wait a minute, black on black crime. If black on black crime exists, then we got to find a name for this as well. Because when you think about majority of the large scale massacres, they are always at the hands of the descendants of the European Americans. Let's say it like that.
and if you think about it, as we've discussed before, if you look at the behavior of what's happening through the years, it's younger and younger people doing it. Uh,
because their
we
grandparents
are
and their parents
we
are
aren't out
feeding them the information. These people are not. These
right
are we're
for,
seeing
for, for, for
very
whatever reasons. Yeah,
present
for
that their
whatever
parents
reasons.
are feeding them the information to make them feel like it's okay and it's cool to do whatever it is that they're doing. These are not random people. These are people that have a history, a lineage, I'm sure, of violence in their families, and they continue to do the same exact type of things. And if it ain't directly in their family, is where they can see it and somebody told them, "Oh yeah, we used to do this." They know the history. They just don't want us to know the history in great detail.
Did you
I
run
think we're saying.
across that in
I
children's
think we're.
services, Mr. Scott?
Well, yeah, I did. As a matter of fact, what you were saying earlier about the drugs and, big Reagan's war on drugs, and what that ended up doing was just putting a lot of black people in jail for minuscule amounts. I mean, they don't have money to really deal with that stuff. And then one of the first things I noticed when I went into child protection in the early 90s is I was at a meeting where this manager wanted to put up a billboard that says, if you use crack, we're going to take your kids. They wanted to put that billboard up in the city of Minneapolis. I'm
Mhm.
like, well, what about treatment for people? What about services for people? That's what child protection is supposed to be, a service industry, not a, a criminal agency. And I think it got, when I worked there, it seemed to get mixed up in, well, if you don't do what I said, we'll take your kids. Well,
You know,
no,
Mr.
no,
Scott, it sounds like when they used to separate families back in the slavery, when as soon as it was a reason to tear them apart, it's all about tearing apart the family because if you tear it
it
apart,
seemed
it
to be.
diminishes them.
It sure seemed to be. So
Mhm.
seeing that up front and getting court cases on, minuscule things when you should be given services, there's always going to be people that need these services. And so if you make them available and you give them the wherewithal to use them, I think, you'd be better off. But we just seem to always be under siege. We just always see everything just seems to come around to keeping us in our place. And that goes back, like I was saying, with the redlining, with the freeways, with the different school closings in certain neighborhoods where you can't get to the school now. And this is the same things that was happening to my grandmother. She used
Mhm.
to tell me down in Talladega, Alabama, they had a school and the school burned down, and so then they'd have to walk to a school. And the way she would say it, well, we have to get up for a day and we have to walk all day to the school. And while finally daddy said, well, just don't go to school. We can just stay home and work. And that's what she did. And she was a hard working woman, but because she didn't get opportunity. And that's what, to me, the whole thing is getting the opportunity. Give us a fair shot. My dad used to say, I don't want to change the game. Just let me play. And I think I mean, that's kind of how I followed the things that I do with my books. I was at Mankato State University, where I graduated from a couple of weeks ago, speaking to the students about our books and why we do them, about the Black communities. And at this point, that's the main thing I can do to keep my granddaughter, my sons, my granddaughters, and keep them out of any kind of negativity, because it is out there. It is ready to grab you. And these kids are really falling into a situation. I think when you say the video games, I think the school should be more important than the video games. I think when kids go to school, they should put them phones down. I think they should listen and focus for that period of time on what they're doing in school. Um,
But
But
even
it,
even
but
within
it, but
even
it's but it's much easier for the teacher to throw a tablet in front of you than to actually teach. But Miss Sims, I also have a question for you because Mr. Scott brought up the freeway system, and one of the things that we've talked about with you is a rail system in Minneapolis that's been proposed for the last what 10 plus years. Okay, and I find there's projects here in San Diego that are getting started that were funded by the Obama administration in our
Mhm.
neighborhoods. One of the things that, yeah, I mean, why does it take so long for these funds to trickle down so long to our neighborhoods? I mean, you're talking, like I said, you're talking about Obama money. You're talking about a project that I believe you were talking Saturday. You said it's been going through some type of uh, phase for the last 15 years. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you know, why does it take so long for us to get resources to the black community?
There's no such thing
I
as
mean,
trickle down. There's no such
right.
thing as trickle down because you don't put anything out there to trickle down. So you bought, but people bought into the idea that trickle down could work if money was out there. But as Mr. Scott's talking about dividing the community, I live a half a block from where the community highway 55 Olson Highway is like a mini rondo that happened in St. Paul, and it happened here in North Minneapolis in regards to that highway. I came to Minneapolis in the early 70s, and at one point this highway was 4 lanes, but within 2 years I was here, it
Yeah.
became 6 lanes, and that was to facilitate the white community or whoever was out there coming into town. The black community stood between the downtown working environment and people coming from the suburbs to work. So they put in 2 more lanes to accommodate that. And with it, at one point the train was to come down the same way. So then you would have 6 lanes of traffic plus the light rail. And some of the committees I was on, I was said, why would you do that? It's a racial thing, even in having 6 lanes, because I went for miles and miles out in the suburbs, and it was all 2 lanes or 4 lanes. But as soon as it hit the black community, you cross that bridge from Golden Valley into Minneapolis, it immediately becomes 6 lanes. 6 lanes for about 15 to 20 blocks. But 15 to 20 blocks, so that's like a mile and a half through a black community. And sure, there's no way that anybody could say that all these things that has happened to us has a history to it. It does. Nobody can deny that it has. You might want to deny it, but it's there. There's a history to it. And for me, is where I'm coming from. What are we going to do about it now? People, for whatever reasons, haven't, or maybe they have tried to do and deal with it and haven't been successful. But now, as we're talking, we can say, I can say to ourselves, and I say to myself, what am I going to do about this? What are we going to do about it? We see it and we know about it. We can pinpoint it and whatever.
It's,
But as we are
See,
still
the
living people, what are we going to do about
it's a tough beat. That's a very tough beat because it's all the things that we've been talking about. And now here in the Twin Cities area, home
I,
ownership is almost unaffordable for an average black person.
See,
And
but
what
that we have to realize that they didn't stop. A lot of the reason why the redlining is becoming a topic now is because the internet exists. Without the information, a lot of people wouldn't be able to say, you know what, this is happening, so we need to address it. So they're trying. In my generation, I believe that we're trying to do as much as we can with still dealing with the same system. So it's kind of hard to navigate or strategically navigate because we're still dealing with the same system. We're just trying to figure out what y'all couldn't get or figure out based on the limitation of the information that y'all had.
Yeah,
Now
but
that the
they've upped
information
the
is
ante. They've upped the ante now. Like here in the Twin Cities, what's happening is these big companies are coming in and buying all the single family houses and renting them.
Yeah,
All
but it's
all in.
this is real life Monopoly for real, for real.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if you never played Monopoly, if you never won at Monopoly, you will never win at this game of life that they then created for us. This American dream was built to to for consumers to consume and to deplete and make the system where you need me, because Section 8 creates a system to where certain communities, predominantly black communities, they need the government. So as long as they create a need-based system to where we need to rely on them to get food, to get medical, to get anything, then it's not going to allow the system to deplete in those areas. I think personally, my strategy and my strategic tips is that black leaders, we have more money than we've ever had before on the books in the forefront, legit money. And now we need to use our resources to supply the needs that the government normally supplies so that we can wean ourselves as a whole off of that system. Now, where we gonna go to? We ain't figured that part out yet, because it's a lot of people that don't have the wherewithal to work. It's a crazy time right now because we got people that know the importance of independence and interdependence, but you got a lot of people that are so codependent that even when it comes to healing and dealing with their own personal traumas, it's easier to put that off and not deal with it and just wiggle away from it and put other things in the forefront. So until we start really addressing things, and critical race theory kind of goes into that. But a lot of schools, like, I live in Atlanta, so it's predominantly black in the city, but it's definitely a lot of dang on Confederate flags everywhere. So, but being in Atlanta, it is a different type of environment than any place else I've ever visited, because it's so black to where it's a powerhouse if we learn how to use it correctly. But a lot of times when people get in too much power, money, because I think we've struggled so long financially, when people get access to money, they allow money to change the way that they run things and lead. And that's our biggest downfall for the most part, I think.
And we have been, as a people, we have been conditioned through the years and trained or whatever to be helpless or to think that we are helpless. Whereas one of the things that we hold power with and we don't realize it is our money, our money in regards to how we use our money and use it for each other, to build each other and to go forward. We don't we don't do that as a whole. I personally, even here in Minneapolis, I personally know, just in thinking about that, there today to this day is continues to be a Black Wall Street. But the thing we don't all live together in a
See,
community,
and then we
so
don't
we
want to
can
then go and put
so
it out there because we don't
so
want it
we
to
can
get
be, yeah.
destroyed.
So yeah, so we don't want to be massacred again. I mean, you send in
Listen,
airplanes to bomb people, so you keep quiet and you work. You don't tell people how rich you
and,
are.
and that's why a
But
lot of things
if you're
seem
in the
like they're
public
not being
eye,
done.
yeah. If you're in the public eye, people can see or they think you're rich, etc., etc. So I think the power of the money and the dollar is out there, but it's not as connected and strategically put together as it was during the Black Wall Street era. And if we, but you're gonna get back to whether we, me, you, and the four of us, what are we gonna do about it? If we and other people after this, black folk, don't start doing something about it, even more so, then we as a people, we're gonna be eradicated. We're gonna suddenly
It'll just be the same
disappear.
cycle of going on and on and
Well,
on. It won't
It'll
be.
be we will disappear because here one of the things
We won't
in
disappear, Miss
Minneapolis
Sims.
that
The
has come
same cycle been
about
going on for hundreds of
that
years.
that has
It's
but
the
come
same
about.
cycle.
A lot of black folk don't want to be described and put into the BIPOC community because we lose our identity because we're in there with so
We
many
don't have an
Native
identity if
Americans,
all of our
yeah.
the
identity
Native
is riddled in
Americans,
trauma.
and we think we don't have an identity. That's it. We
We
bought
don't.
into
The
that.
identity that
we,
you
we,
have, the identity that we have as a whole, as a culture, is riddled in trauma. You don't have an identity until you
the
begin to heal the
identity
trauma.
the identity that we have is victims. That's our identity.
But until you heal
But
that victimization, you won't be able to know who
well,
you really are.
right. Yeah. I mean,
Guess what I'm saying? We're saying the same thing. We're all saying the same thing in different
but
ways, I think.
but Miss Sims and Mr. Scott, uh, you guys recently had an election, and being on the shows from your city, one of the things that I heard was change. We need change. We need change. We need to do this. We need, but yet in your election, you reelected the same mayor. You put the same people back on the school board. So how do you expect change if you keep putting the same people in the same places?
Well, it's so entrenched. It's like, just today, I don't know if you know this, Ms. Sims probably knows, but Chief Arredondo said he's leaving. Chief Arredondo said he's had it. Next month, at the end of next month, he's gone. So right away, the mayor's got to find an interim chief right away because this is coming up in a month. We won't have a chief. And I think he left because, I mean, how much can he stand? I mean, how much? I mean, look what this man has gone through trying to do things for this city of Minneapolis and police. And it's just such an uphill battle with the union, with they have spent so much money on police brutality suits. It's staggering. They have spent millions and millions of dollars because of the way they handle their work. And so, yeah, there does need to be a change. It needs to be a new chief. There needs to be something done with the union. But this stuff is so entrenched. I mean, Arredondo himself, 10, 15 years ago, they tried to fire him and four other high-ranking black officers said they were selling drugs in their car. Bunch of foolishness. And so they said, okay, well, let's just go to court, and you tell the court what you say we were doing. And then they just settled the case and paid him and went away. But these are the things that's so hard to overcome, and I think we can only overcome them together. I just don't see that there's anybody else that's going to really. You get in these jobs, you might be the only black person there. You got a couple black.
Yeah, yeah,
What are you going
yeah,
to do? You got to
yeah.
try to keep your job. You got to try to, can you bring in other people? Can you have power to do those things? And you're really under the microscope.
I think I saw that that announcement today about the police chief leaving. And if you're on the inside, like he has been, and catching the hell and high water, and here again, you're constrained in those environments. You're constrained to a certain amount in regard to what you're willing to do and to pay the price you're personally willing to pay uh, to speak out. What did uh, John Lewis say? See something, say something, and he had said something. I mean, through this election, he had said something. He took a stand or whatever. But when you're on the inside and you feel, and the reality is you're by yourself, eventually you will think about and have to evaluate your life, people in your life, how you're dealing with things, and who who is responsible, and who are the people that can deal with this so you won't be alone. Then your thinking becomes differently, and you do differently. And there are other parts of the countries that are looking for that I mean, he probably has a job already. I think Don Ellis said it a while back, brought that. He probably has a job already, because different parts of the country that will act differently, like Mr. King is saying, and do differently.
He
They're
interviewed for
gonna
the
want him. They're gonna
he
want him right away.
he interviewed for the job out here in California as L.A. police chief.
I think it
Mhm.
was San Jose. San
Well,
Jose.
I think it was both. I'm not sure,
Oh,
but
both. Okay.
I know he was out here, and I think one's a little, I mean, quite
I think I
naturally,
would have took the San
one's
Jose job. The people are rich out there. They don't have no police crime out there, do they?
no, they got
And
black
he
people
may,
hanging from trees, but they don't have a lot of, but that's
and
another,
he
that's
may
another.
he may or may not go out there. But here again, it gets back to us, the citizens, the ones who remain here. We can't keep doing as Mr. King, who lives in San Diego, can tell and see, and he's putting it on. What are you guys doing differently? Nothing. You don't do anything different. You can't expect a different outcome. So we are going to have to do something differently and immediately in regards to all this talk that said this election said we want to do, etc., etc. Right now, looking on the inside of who we elected, it's kind of like if the people on the outside, like me and the residents, don't do something, get our hands in it, it's going to be a stalemate because you got about the same amount of people. One says one thing, the other says just the opposite. So it's just going to go over and over and go nowhere fast. It's like spinning your wheels and going nowhere. And if we are want to survive as a people, as a black people, and as in these communities, and not be replaced by displacement and gentrification, we've got to do something differently. We have got to.
Aren't you tired of surviving, Miss Sims? I mean, don't you want to thrive at some point? I'm
Well,
just
see,
saying.
now
I'm
when I
just
say
asking. I mean,
yeah, when I say survive, I don't mean just hang in there and do anything. I mean survive as a positive thing and rise to the top, not just eat crumbs to survive, to
That's
just
not
to sustain your
surviving.
body. Thriving, or maybe I'm using the wrong word. I mean to live. How about live?
there
To
you go.
exist, to live, and well, not just to live for crumbs, but to rise, to live, to obtain the
I,
highest state that you can as a people and individually, as we're going to be wiped out
I
because our children are out in the streets, getting shooting each other, getting killed, going to jail, etc., etc. So that one, if you look historically, one of the reasons that a lot of the civilizations deteriorated is because of the youth. They didn't take care of their youth. They allowed them to be killed. They killed them themselves, etc. So that's just a cycle of life. If you cut off part of the cycle that generates life, eventually it's going to get to you.
Before I get too involved off in some other things, Dr. Casey, I want you to comment on one of my favorite ladies. She's running again for governor of the state of Georgia. I was very glad to hear about that. I was a supporter of hers during her first tried election, even though I don't live in Georgia. And as one of my projects is to deliver water to the city of Atlanta to some of these polling places. So, can you kind of give us a little background on Stacy's new commitment to the state of Georgia? And you have some talk about some really laughable, crazy. I mean, Kemp and Trump's guy here. I mean, you have quite a scenario going on there in Georgia. You want to kind of fill us in on what's going on?
Okay, so my opinion is not probably gonna be the one that you really might like enjoy, because Kemp is not good for certain areas of things, but at the same time, there are some things that, with his experience, may be good for us. Now, he is a Trump supporter, but at this point, it's almost like who in the leadership seat hadn't been or isn't in some instance, way, shape, form, or fashion. But because Joe ass ain't no fucking better. Okay, I don't like Joe. Joe need to go. But when it comes to Stacey Abrams, Again, I am not a big in knowing her stance at this moment. I would have to really look deeper into it. However, if she is for mandates for vaccinations, I'm not going to be with her. The Democrats are becoming more dictative than democratic to me in some ways. So, like, I don't have the common black democratic views on a lot of things. I am when you talk about a new party, I'm one of the ones that kind of back the mindset of having a new party, or at least going in and correcting the two narratives that are at hand right now. Stacey Abrams has a great history of leadership, and she has a great story, but Keisha Bottoms did too. And she didn't do shit. She kind of buckled under pressure. So it's one of those things to where I don't have a lot of room to put hope in the people that's going into politics until they've shown me that they are for the majority of the collective issues. Because if we getting the same people in and we doing the same things over and over again, I'm not with it.
Well, now isn't there a large? Well, I guess the black population of Georgia is really centered around Atlanta.
Atlanta. It's over 400,000 people. It's really okay. So in the metro city, we have this. It's a number thing downtown that tells us it's about 5 million people in Metro Atlanta. That's all the surrounding cities, and it's
Mhm.
about 400,000 in Atlanta, in itself. So although we got Stacey Abrams coming about now, we just had another runoff with the mayors, and it's just been crazy because the person that was trying to be mayor, Felicia Moore, literally stand with Trump supporters and Republicans, and I mean she got bullied by her supporters for not being with the Rittenhouse verdict, and then she removed that. So when it comes to the governor race, it's important for voting because Kemp is on some other, stuff when it comes to the voting laws. However, it's a whole lot more to running a state than just the short-sighted list of promises
But
being made.
shouldn't Abrams have a good
She had
chance?
a
I
good
mean,
chance. Oh yeah.
you have these other two splitting their vote. I mean, they can't. These two are going head to head as Republicans, and maybe she could come in and um,
I definitely think that she could
majority.
win if the black voters show up in a real way, and those that are disgruntled about the new policies as far as voting, then we will do numbers. But there are a lot of new voters that's coming in now. So I think that she has a great chance because the votership is present. It's just making sure that the Democratic voters outnumber the people that show up for the Republican Party, and a lot of times it's going to depend on those mail-in ballots, and being able to get to the polls and be counted because they do a lot of trickery here in Georgia with the closing the polls. The machines don't work. They be having two machines at a place that is a large polling area. It's a lot of stuff that go on here.
Well, that sounds like a Trump. That sounds like Trump saying everything's fake. Elections are all fake. But what I do want to ask
No,
you
no,
that
no, no, no.
is
Not that they're fake. They're just they
rigged.
do trickery to discourage voters to come and or have standing land. Like right now, I think it's a law where they can't pass out water. You trying to send water, James, you might send somebody to jail because they are creating
It's
laws to
ridiculous.
go
Oh
against
yeah.
everything
That
that
is
makes it
ridiculous.
comfortable.
That is
Well,
utterly ridiculous.
there are certain restrictions that apply, and one of the things that was very evident is that you couldn't outside help was considered agitation. So therefore, like I couldn't come to Atlanta and be the face,
No, I don't
but
think that you can pass out water. Period. Now, just as of recent.
has so that then they've even made it even more stricter than what it was because
they,
I
they
you know
they play a lot of games. I mean, and that for that reason, Kemp doesn't need to be in office because he has this
yeah
slanted
you
view.
can't you can't have any type of political messages on the bottles. They could only be they couldn't be passed out. The people that passed them out couldn't have any type of political agenda, which was why I wanted to use black veterans. Try to some, but then of course, as you were saying, there are certain repercussions. So we were also looking into the fact of whether or not we were going to need a bail fund if we were going to be
Mhm.
passing out water. So,
I think it would be
yeah,
safe to have that just because you just never know. Like in one polling place, they may not bother you, but another one, they may be sending people around just to harass people.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
the
Here,
like
here
like
again.
Atlanta
Yeah.
is black, but Georgia is still a Confederate state.
Yeah,
It's crazy though.
I understand what I do understand what you're
I
saying.
want to ask Dr. Casey something that you said earlier about the vaccine.
Hmm.
And what I want to ask you is your stance
I
on
am not
vaccine.
vaccinated. I am not totally against it. Like if I just had to get it, like if it was nowhere around it, I would. But I think that it was definitely pushed out extremely quickly, and the numbers prior to the vaccination being released does not support the mandate that's present. Aside from the fact that Joe Biden said that there would never have to be a mandate, and that Dr. Fauci said that vaccinations would not be needed if you took
But
care of your health correctly.
Trump said it didn't even exist. He said
I
after
mean, but
those
Trump
four,
also called it the
he
China virus.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, he
So I
had it.
mean,
He had it.
so I mean, uh, as you know,
But also,
we all have our different
yeah,
views
we
on
Mr. Scott,
vaccine.
you wasn't here when when Miss Sims was about to go in on the anti-vaxxers, and I had to hold on, Miss Sims. I am one. Please slow
She
down.
she drew
Well,
a line, and
say
I
you're
respected
more
it.
at risk. They say you're more at risk if you're older. For one, they say that it could be more devastating to you. But on the other hand, I'm with you because the information that they give us, it changes all the time.
Hmm.
Then they say that you need to get a booster. Then they say, well, you can get the booster. It can be a different one from the vaccine you've already had.
I
And
just
there's
heard
too much
a
confusing
news thing, Mr.
information.
Scott, where the somebody on the news said that the flu doesn't exist anymore. They didn't X'd out the flu. Everything is either COVID or non-COVID. But literally, and I have it because I was gonna post it, where the lady is saying that the flu does not exist anymore. So it's a lot of trickery going on. Like I was telling them before, the percentage of people that survived prior to the vaccination even being available was 97%. Um, about 97%. And so, but when if you go and say that out of 50 million people, 49.9 million survived, then guess what? People are not going to be as fearful and so anxious to listen to what y'all have to say. But if you play it like, well, it's a large number that passed away, then it'll put more fear in people.
Well, yeah, it's the hospitals are full. You can't get in the ICUs. They can't do regular type surgeries because so many people are flooding all the hospitals because of COVID and now this new Omni variant. It
It's gonna
really
always be
it's
another
off
variant,
balance.
though. That's the problem.
That,
Like,
that,
what are you
that,
going to
that,
do
but
to combat the variants?
well, that's what viruses mutate. That's what they do. I mean, I mean, but I I'm one of those. I've had all my booster shots, the whole 9 yards. But then I've also had a couple heart attacks, and I got a couple other things wrong. But then again, the way I figured, I've been through 3 wars and 4 penitentiaries. So it's anything that you want,
That's right.
anything that you haven't put in me already. If you want to track me, please go ahead. If you'd like to pay my IRS bill, I can send you your whatever information you need. So anybody that wants to track me, if you haven't got enough information in the last 74 years, just contact me. I'll give you the rest. It don't matter to me. But anyway,
Well, here again, if you're talking, and I keep telling people, when you talk politics, you really have to think it through. All politics contain three things: strategies, power, and control.
So my question would be,
Others,
what is the
and you
control
do
and
it,
the strategy of the
and you,
vaccination?
it changes. Well, and I was going to ask you about that. This is what I heard from you. It might not be what you said, but this is what I heard when you were talking about Stacey Abrams. And towards the end, you said, well, for anybody that's for helping the majority of the people or something like that. But the contradiction is you said you would vote for somebody that was
If it's
said
mandating vaccinations, no, I'm not with it.
vaccination. And
I'm
so
not with
even
it.
you and you and
so
I,
you and
I,
you and Mr. Scott, I'm thinking, okay, if you just talk numbers, you can talk numbers all day long. But what about the reality
the
of people you
reality is
see
in the
dying?
numbers.
You see people dying, and your next door neighbors gets it, and your
I
family
had a
members
cousin
are
that died in
dying and
September
dying and dying
from
from it.
COVID
So
related.
you're valuing the numbers over
Because the
people of the
numbers are the
but
reality
truth.
over.
but
And
but
one of the things that's happening in regards to having had the advantage of doing long studies for years and years is that this virus won't stop. Doesn't stop until
see
you do your
see
study and whatever.
You
It's
know,
killing
did
right
you
here,
know
away.
that the
So
here,
you
flu
got to do
is
here's
a
something.
COVID?
You
here's
got
the
to do
here's the
something.
mis here's the misconception. Okay, I didn't get my booster to protect you. I
You
did
got it
it.
for yourself. But
I did it. I did it for me. So therefore, whether or
I
not
don't
you
like
get
the
vaccinated
commercials. The
is
commercials
up
that
to
to
you.
get vaccinated for the next person, that's not your
No,
vaccination does not help nobody because guess what? One, you can still get COVID. Two, you can
Yeah,
still pass COVID. And
you can
three,
get
you can
it.
still die from COVID.
They say you
well,
can eat. This new person that got it here, that has the new strain here in Minnesota, said he was fully vaccinated and he had the
yeah,
booster shot, and he
and
still
the
got sick.
same thing here in California. But the difference is that those people are living rather than dying
But
when
a
they
lot
get
that's what I'm saying. The 97% of people that was living with, after getting COVID, they live
it.
too.
Hey,
It,
more
it's it's
power
it's
to
the luck
them.
of the
We
draw.
haven't
More,
seen no autopsy of these
more power to
people.
them. That's why I said the
You know,
vaccine is a personal choice.
Yeah, that's
Whether
why I said I don't want it to be mandated because it should be a personal choice. That's the
yeah,
reason.
and,
If you begin to mandate things that are personal choices, then guess what? The whole abortion thing, guess what? You may as well mandate that too. If you mandate what I put in there, when you gonna tell me what I have to do to be around other people, okay, well then guess what? Then it's okay for if you're gonna mandate vaccines, then you gotta mandate pregnancy. You gotta mandate it's a lot of other shit that we can mandate because it falls up
hey,
under that
hey,
line.
but I what happens now?
Well,
I will say this. Now the Roe versus Wade and mandating pregnancy, I am very uh
We live
reluctant.
in a land that's supposed to be a free, and we are not
But
damn free. We got the most
but I
restrictions.
don't think. But I do not think that a man has the right to tell a woman what to do with her body. Just like I don't think that a woman should be able to tell me whether or not I should be circumcised. So though it might be a
Agreed.
slippery slope, but I don't think
But
like I
but
said,
when you talk about mandating vaccinations, that's along the same lines to me.
well, you see,
but I've been mandated to take a polio vaccine. I've been mandated to take certain to make
You
sure
you
that
you
my
could you
kids.
there's a religion exemption form that you can fill out and not have to take none of those.
yeah,
Dr.
they
Casey,
are. They
you
don't
seem
have
to
to
get
touch your
But
exemption.
see, Doctor Casey, see once again. you're talking about religion, and that's something that I don't play
No,
with.
no, no, no.
So therefore, wait a minute. Let me make my point. See, just like I would tell anybody that I don't go to church, that I'm not, because I don't. 'Cause, I would consider myself being a hypocrite, sitting in there singing songs and praise and so forth and so on to an entity that I do not necessarily believe in. So therefore, I don't participate in organized religion. I also feel the same way when it comes to uh, freedom of choice. I should your freedom of choice. I fought for that. So, and you did too. So, so if you don't want to take the vaccine, that's fine. But just don't pull up beside me in an airplane not wearing a mask.
I mean, but you can still you make sure you got your mask on
Oh,
too,
yes,
because you
sir.
can just
Yes,
see.
sir.
But
Yeah,
no, for
no
me,
doubt.
I
But
don't go
when I
out. I'm not. I've been living a quarantine life for several years. I'm not big on going out and being in the clubs and doing. Now, I did go out for my birthday, and I felt kind of comfortable because there wasn't that many people there. But and
So
I don't
even
have
you,
COVID. I got a COVID test kit upstairs. I got about 4, 5 of them because I am a very I'm a not overly cautious. My kids are back in school. My son want to play basketball, but guess what? If he got to get the COVID vaccine to play basketball, he's out. He won't be playing.
well, Dr. Casey, you seem to be. This is what I'm hearing, but it may not be what you're saying. That you are strongly emphasizing the word mandated, mandated. You hook it with a control of someone. You being someone trying to control you through a
Yeah, ain't
mandate.
that what that is?
But do you realize that all through life we're mandated to do certain things? You're mandated to
Did
take care
Miss
of your
Sims?
children.
Did you just
You're
hear me say,
mandated. You're mandated to take care of your children.
Miss
You're
Sims?
mandated to sit
I'm
into
not
to get the
mandated. Guess what?
mandate.
My mama didn't take care of me. My mama tried to kill me. She ain't go to jail for it. You're not mandated to take care of your kids because you can drop them off at a fire station when they born. You can drop them off and take them to child protective service. That's not a mandate. A mandate is
Yep,
saying that if you don't do it, you're going something bad gonna happen.
well,
What
something
that
let
bad
me.
did that
did
do that?
happen. I mean, something bad does happen when you don't take care of your children. The children suffer
That
in some
that's not a
various
personal
manners.
suffering though. So
Okay,
it's not mandated.
and then I asked, I asked myself, people that for whatever reason don't get vaccinated. What do you what and who do you think is keeping this virus alive? That's killing people that get
What you mean
stronger
the
and
virus
stronger.
ain't gonna die if it can be passed through? Guess what, Miss Sims? You
There,
vaccinated and James
I said
vaccinated.
last year, and I said
Miss Sims, hold
last
on.
week,
Miss
there's
Sims,
no
hold
hundred
on. Hold
percent
on,
of
Miss Sims.
anything. There's
Miss
no
Sims.
hundred
Miss
percent of
Sims. Miss
anything.
Sims.
Yes,
Shh.
yes,
Hold on for a second. Hold on for one
okay,
second. Just be quiet for 1 second, Miss Sims. I don't want to be disrespectful. So hold on for
okay.
1 second. 1 second.
Are you gonna draw another line? Okay, go
Guess
ahead.
guess what? If you and James get in the same room and you got COVID, you can give it to James. Y'all both fully vaccinated. He got boosters and
Yep,
everything.
I
Guess
understand that.
what?
I understand that.
And I don't want to speak this over either one of y'all lives, but somebody that's fully vaccinated can die
Yep,
from COVID.
that's true. That's
So
true.
why is that mandatory for me to get a shot that's not guaranteed to protect me? It won't stop it. It won't cure it. It won't do shit. But
It
damn,
was.
put a shot in me, some medicine
It
that's gonna
was.
alter my DNA and my bloodstream.
It was.
I'm not with
It
it.
was. It's not mandated for you. Like I said,
I don't
you
work a
have
regular job, so no, it's not
you have
mandated.
you have personal choice. Whether you worked
No,
a
there are
job.
people that are in jobs that their job is telling them that if they don't get it, they're fired. Thank God I'm a disabled veteran at
Right.
100%, and
Hey,
I ain't got to work for nobody.
and I totally agree with that because hey, like any other job, you got job requirements. Just like when you're a crook, if you do something wrong, you go to jail or you die. So we have consequences. The consequence, like mandates. Maybe we're using it in two different ways, but I mean, I don't. I don't. I did. I wasn't. I wasn't mandated to get anything. I got anything I got, anything I put in my body, I got it because I wanted it in there.
You personally,
Right,
but
me
there
personally.
is a
So,
mandate
well,
for people, for a large
and
majority of people, to not
and
have a
and
choice.
and if I had a job and I wanted to stay in that job, then yes, I would. I
I'm
would
not against
either.
people that do it. Listen,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mr. James, my nephew is in prison right now. He got the COVID shot. You know what I asked him? How it make you feel? You all right? I ain't mad at you, but I just want to make sure you don't die from getting the COVID vaccine because you can die from it.
yeah. But then again, like I don't. I have control about how many people come
Right.
in my surroundings. If I and believe me, I know this very well. If I'm locked up in the cell, one day it might be a two-man cell, depending upon what happens with the state budget. The next month it might be an eight-man cell. So when you're up close and that personal with people, I don't know. Like I said,
Again,
jail
if I
is a
need
lot
it,
different. Not
when
than
I
what it used
decide
to
that I
be.
want to travel, if there is a mandate for me to have a vaccine to travel, it's not right now. I can just swab my nose and go on about my business. But if they made it to where I had to do that to travel, I would reluctantly. Oh my God, it would tear my soul out of my body to get this damn shot and be forced to do it because I'm not
Well, see,
choosing to do it.
well, see,
That's what I said. The
I don't
words.
want. I don't. When you talk about that test and having to go through that, I've come through. I'm at an age now where I don't want people poking in any orifices of mine that I don't want, and sticking some up my nose or any any other
Well, you
place
do it
on
yourself.
the.
I just went for the concert that I went to. I went and got a COVID test. I haven't been around nobody. I actually just had a cold
Yeah,
last
but
week.
they have false tests. They give the people that they have false tests. I mean, some of these athletes
Again,
apparently
I
they
went to
had
the
it,
doctor.
and
I
then
used the
and it's
box.
positive, and then they go back and take another test. Oh, now you're
But
negative, so now
but
you can
but
go
the
play.
thing
Well,
but
no,
the thing of it is,
2 days
doctor.
before, I used the box test that I have. I have an at home box test that I use, and then I went to the CVS and did another test. So I had two tests on 2 different days. It wasn't the
Yeah,
same day.
and you're comfortable taking the test. I'm comfortable taking the vaccine. It's
Right.
just a matter of choice to me.
But
That's all it is.
the issue is we should have a choice. That's what I want, the choice to remain. Because if you're
Yeah.
going to mandate one thing, then it's
Well,
like you should
but see,
mandate everything.
they tell you your choice is live or die. I mean, this is the way.
I mean,
This is the way
death
they.
is a part of life. Death
This
is
is the
going to
way.
happen. There is no way to get around that part.
Well, you guys
Well,
are you guys are really saying both sides of the coin. It's a 50-50 chance
Yeah.
either way. But even
Really?
you, Dr. Casey said that if something came about would be to your advantage, more so to your advantage to take the test. I mean, to take a vaccine, that you would do it. Here again,
If I
it's
felt forced
choice.
to, yes.
That's,
It's choice and our freedom to choose, etc., etc. And I think it's come about that people use the man and the power to mandate something because we as a people, we're not perfect. We can't control everything. We don't know everything. But in regard to something that's visibly killing us that we can see and
Okay, so
whatever,
pregnancy kill
we
people,
try
so
to stop we
abortion
try
should be
to
cool.
stop it the best way we can. We
It's
try to
every
stop it
nothing.
the best
Guess
way we
what, Miss
can.
M?
well,
There
hold
is
on.
nothing that we can do out of this in this world that will not lead in death. Everybody,
I told you
every
that.
single person will
I
die.
told you
I
that.
mean that is
That's
the
right.
conclusion of
You
life.
All
live
right.
long enough.
Okay.
You
Okay.
live long
You
Okay.
enough.
cannot
You're
Hold
gonna
on.
die.
you will not live in this world unless you die
Hold,
because you're gonna
hold,
die.
That's right.
hold
I
on.
already
So if
said
it's my
that.
time to go, whenever my time is, I got life insurance for my children. I got them set up right. If it's my time to go, then I am not about to do some extra shit just to try to hold on.
But
See now you're well
hold on.
prepared. Okay.
Let's not get off into a vaccine
Thank you.
discussion here. Let's get like I
Okay.
said, it's an individual choice. You want to take it, you take it. You don't want to take it, that's up to you. I did my thing, you do yours. But uh, Mr. Scott. why don't we get your final words for the evening? Anything that particularly you'd like to talk about? Like I said, it doesn't seem like you guys made a whole lot of changes up there in your neck of the woods, even though everybody's crying out for change.
Please give us
Yeah,
the
we got the
title of your
same
book.
there. We got the same there. Oh, the title of my book?
Yes.
The new book is Minnesota's Black Community in the 21st Century. And then
And
there's
the
a
other one.
the reprint is just the Scott collection.
Okay.
And that's like 50 pages, excuse me, 500 pages of three books that my dad did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And like I say, I'll be at the university, another Zoom meeting tomorrow at the university and the Hennepin Historical Society. We're going to talk about the freeways. And here in the Twin Cities, there's a big push. The people in St. Paul have done a real good job about commemorating the Rondo area that was tore down by the freeways. And now they've proposed, the city of St. Paul has proposed doing something called a land bridge, that they're going to build a bridge over the freeway. And apparently there's going to be houses and they're going to try to recreate Rondo, which to me sounds like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That when you take these neighborhoods away, they're gone. There really is no coming back. Um, and I have been vaccinated. I got the
I
Pfizer
invest in both their companies.
shot.
I got stock in Pfizer and in Moderna, so I'm not mad at y'all.
Thank you, Doctor
Run it up.
Casey, for your contribution. Thank
But
you,
I have
thank
not
you,
got a
Pfizer,
thank you,
booster.
Pfizer,
I have not.
thank you for helping keep your
I
life.
have not got a booster. I have not got a booster, and I've never taken a flu shot. Because I was going to take a flu shot years ago. I went with my brother to get his, and he was so sick that he's never taken another flu shot, and I've never taken one. So I don't, and I still am very mistrustful of all the things that they tell us on the news, especially something as serious as what you're going to put in your body. Because when if you can listen to Fox News, you can listen to CNN, MS, and you'll hear something totally different. They'll have doctors on there that tell you something totally different from what you've heard from the other doctors. My situation, I decided to take the vaccine because I'm 70 years old, and I said, it's probably a good idea for me to do this. But as far as the next stage of the booster or whatever, I'm kind of like, maybe we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've been doing okay. I mean, I still maybe will get to the gym, do a little bit here, a little bit there. So, but I encourage my kids to take it. But one of my sons takes the virus. The other one, he's not taking anything. He says
I'm with him. Tell him I
he's
said
not
high
taking.
five.
He doesn't do it. So, as James was saying, I believe it's a choice. And I think people have to do their own homework, make up their mind, look at their situation, and evaluate, and go from there.
well, thank you for your time, Mr. Scott. And this time next Thursday, I hope you will not be too disappointed with the ass whooping that we will be putting upon your Vikings.
Actually, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not. Your quarterback is really on his last legs, but I don't think too much of ours either. So it should be a good tussle.
Yeah, two has-beens, two old gunslingers who would each of with no bullets left in the gun. But I look forward to talking to you Saturday
Okay,
on our Black Voices,
okay,
our
Mr.
Black
Moore,
News.
Dr. Casey, my pleasure.
Have a
Uh,
good evening.
Ms. Sims, any final thoughts from you this evening? And always a very good heated discussion between you and Dr. Casey.
Only about
What?
the vaccines.
Well, uh,
You shouldn't have brought it
I
up.
mean, thank you.
Dr. Casey, I'm with you. I do have some stock in Moderna, but that's the shot that I took. So I definitely got some
I
stock.
hope you, yeah.
I'm not sure. The last I heard, Pfizer was had lost a little on the exchange today, but I keep up with Moderna pretty regular.
They were
Miss
both down
Sims,
a little bit.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
I knew that.
here again, you all are acting on your self interest, and one of your self
Of
interest is to
course. Uh,
invest in these companies. But I thank you for helping protect me and those I love and care about. My final words is to always use wisdom and good judgment in all things, and no matter how we can individually separate or isolate or make decisions from each other, the fact of the matter and the reality is, in the cycle of life, we're all connected somewhere down the line. And what one does will affect the other, maybe not directly, but indirectly, and maybe later than soon.
well, thank you so much, Miss Sims, and I look forward to talking to you again next week also.
Sure.
And next month, um, I'm going to get into a subject that really may kind of be educational, but it'll also tick a lot of black people off because we're going to talk about white Christianity for the month of January. Notice I said white Christianity. So, uh,
I don't think it's any other one.
you might want to, well,
Well,
it
I can't
depends.
wait for that part.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring the head of the San Diego Black Panther Party on, Mr. Robert Ward Williams. The San Diego Black Panther Party. I give them the last hour of my show, and we kind of talk about things. Well, we're going to talk about the Rittenhouse thing. I definitely want to ask them about the Huey Newton Gun Club participation and uh, just how things are going in general since these two verdicts. Uh, Brother Williams, how are you doing tonight?
all power to
I'm
people, brother James, and other guests. Dr. Casey, I do got to say, I'm about to say this. I love you, Dr. Casey, because you are hilariously truthful. that that was funny listening to y'all to argue to both points. Um, without diverting, I do want to give my quick one one spit of input on that last argument. I do side with Dr. Casey, but also like Sims, I did take the COVID vaccine. I hate that I had to take it, but in essence, I didn't have to take it. I had a choice, but I did not want to take it. I don't agree that it should be mandated as well. I think that should be a choice thing. So I agree with that aspect. One last part of that argument is keep in mind also when we deal with the mutations and the variants, especially looking at the state of Israel in terms of where they are, they're on their fourth. They've already given their fourth booster shot. So what does that tell you? And with each person that has already received booster shots that gets the vaccine, that creates a more stronger type of mutation. That's one of the biggest things that the scientists are looking at, and the scariest thing is that basically what this means is that at some point they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and alter how they move forward with a vaccine. So this vaccine approach that is currently underway is temporary based on what's happening. So just keep that in mind. So we're pretty soon, if we keep allowing genetically modified warfare things to escape labs, we're gonna be a walking cocktail. Or that whole theory that was in the Planet of Apes series is gonna come true.
I definitely felt from the beginning that it was a art of war that was biological that happened with this COVID. And just for reference, the flu is COVID. It's just a different version of COVID.
Right.
So with every variation, it's like just a different version of flu. Kind of like how it was different versions of flu. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
weird because it's almost like the COVID vaccine is going to replace the flu vaccine, and then the booster shots will be the every yearly booster shots, or however often you need to get those flu shots in order to stay um, flu resistant. So
Right.
it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't type of scenarios, technically, but physically I feel very confident in not taking the vaccine.
Yeah.
All right.
Um, Brother Williams,
Yes, sir.
the I wanted to ask you about uh, the presence of the chapter of the UAP Newton Gun Club at the Aubrey trial.
Yep.
I had asked earlier, is this something that we should see, that we need to see? Now,
Well,
based upon based upon the verdict, it would seem like we need this in front of every courthouse. But you know, but once again, is this a viable situation?
well, let me say this first. I knew a lot of the faces that I saw at the courthouse. These are some brothers that I soldiered with back in the days when I lived in Dallas, Texas, and as well as Atlanta, because I used to stay in Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. Casey, as well as when I stayed in Orlando, Florida. So I pretty much knew that that was going to happen. Now I can't hear, especially with the way I operate now under the Black Panther Party versus the new Black Panther Party. I can't necessarily speak from their perspective, but what I would say is that I am not an advocate of continuous armed maneuvers under the pretense of a situation that does not necessarily uh, warrant my ability or my position of possibly having to use that weapon for the sake of it. In other words, I don't want to get in a situation where we pushing wolf tickets. And I say that coming from the standpoint of knowing that I was involved in many armed maneuvers myself. And so it to me it starts losing its bite, and it gets to a point to where depending on what you're going out there for, now it looks like it's just for show. And that is my biggest concern about that. And also knowing that as black people, unfortunately, we can't do the same thing the same way white folks do. So I don't see us having the same results of our situation that they have. So it looks good. It's a show of force. There are certain things that I do agree with the mannerism in which sometimes that is utilized, but this is the bottom line to that situation. Had they got off, had they not been convicted,
What was gonna happen?
what am I going to do now? I'm standing there with a weapon, armed, as if I'm intimidating the scenario, or as if I'm going to make a diff, or I'm going to set it off. So when it comes down to things not working in the favor that creates that perception, what do you do at that point? Because if you don't do nothing, then it's damn sure going to weaken your ability to walk around with those weapons anymore. It
Hmm.
makes you look like a fool. Okay, if and if you do use it, that is going to kill the entire struggle from the standpoints of who we are as Panthers across the board, because they go after them right away, and they're gonna be coming after me in the morning.
Hmm. It makes you a target.
It makes me a unnecessary target. I'm a
Hmm.
target by being a Panther. I get
Right.
that, but I don't want to be an unnecessary target. So that's my concern about that. It you really got to think about it. And just going back on, to me, the most justified arm maneuver that we did, that I participated in, was when we did an arm maneuver in Jasper, Texas. And let me give you the backdrop behind that. You had a situation where brother Nick Jamesburg Jr. was drugged behind the back of a pickup truck until his head came off, basically. Next thing you know, we receive a phone call, the new Black Panther Party, we receive a phone call that the Klan is going to march in the black community to bolster the fact that they just killed a black man. So what did we do? We armed up and we went to the black community to prevent the Klan from going in there marching. Did they march? Hell no. Did the police department of Jasper even told us if we step foot in a city, they were going to arrest us? We knew our rights. We knew that the police department was controlled by the Klan, as well as the fire department, as well as a lot of the emergency services. You were dealing with a city back in the 90s that is literally stepping back in time as if you're in the 1940s and 50s. This is how Jasper was at that point in time. When we did our armed maneuver, it served a purpose. It showed the people that they had the ability to protect themselves and the right to protect themselves and do not live in fear. And as a result, going back to what you saw in this trial, where you basically had them being in part of the defense at the point was talking about how they don't like black preachers being there because it intimidates the situation. Well, we had Jesse Jackson come down to Jasper, Texas, and you know what he told the black folks? Make sure you always walk in twos and don't go out after dark. So hell yeah, the new Black Panther Party had to come down there because what was being told to them is to give in to fear of just your natural rights and abilities. You don't tell black folks they can't go out after dark. Go back and look at the news and see that. You'll see where he literally came and told people, be careful, don't go out after dark and walk in pairs. Come on now.
But
That don't make no sense.
Brother Williams, uh, the gun club also had a demonstration within the complex
Hmm.
earlier, and there was no black, I mean, no white police presence.
Right.
There was no, there was no people out on their lawn talking about go home and all that.
All right, right,
They
right.
you know, no one told you know, and they kept their behinds inside and let the protest go on peacefully, even though
Correct.
it was an armed. And I guess I'm trying to say, to show how these two instances of uh, show of black force, I think, had a direct influence upon the way that whole situation was handled, as opposed to the way things were handled in Wisconsin.
Well, I want to say this. I don't think that, and this is just my personal opinion, speaking as Robert Williams. I don't think that them attending made any difference whatsoever on the verdict. I do want to say that. But what I do say is their presence may have helped, especially black people, feel a little bit better about the situation because we showed up. I understand that. I'm not saying their presence is bad there, not at all. My concern again has to do with a situation to where if we get too comfortable just finding excuses to show up at stuff armed, at some point in time somebody's going to pull a wolf ticket on us. And what are we going to do? And when that happens, what does it say about me being standing there with a weapon? And that will end up making the movement look weak. You have to be real calculated about the reasoning for armed defense, as far as protests and why. For instance, the one we're talking about, where the white boy shot up some people, his situation was he went out armed at a protest for self-defense. He did not go to an armed protest to show to have a show of force of being armed. That was his little wiggle technicality. That is different than the not fucking around coalition having a armed protest for the sake of telling folks that, look, we are, which I completely agree with the discipline aspect. I completely agree with the fact that when we do it, unless you have somebody with provocateurs who intend on making us look bad, we are disciplined, we do things right, and there's no incidents. That's how it should be. That's how an armed protest should be. But that's given anyway in that situation. I better be disciplined. In fact, when we did ours, we told our people up going up and down the line, because I was the minister of defense of that situation in Jasper. For that, I was deputized at that for that specific aspect. It's like if anybody drop their weapons or point them in the wrong direction or use your weapon unlawfully, I'm gonna be the one to shoot you. I'm letting them know, my people know that they but hold their discipline. You but not mess up. You but not screw this up, everybody. Because somebody doing something, making the wrong move, when everybody's armed, and mind you, this is another thing a lot of people don't think about those facts. Every time I went out and done an armed protest, not saying this is the case with all of them, the police department had a sniper for every one of us out there. We all had dots on us. So don't think that now that may not have been the case if you show up with 400 or 500 people with weapons. But if you're talking about a small group of people, maybe between 20 and 50 people, they got a dot on every one of y'all. So don't think you got the upper hand. It is a perception thing. Okay, let's get it clear. It is a perception thing, especially when you got people, organizations like the Not Fucking Around Coalition, go get permits to do an armed maneuver. That is not a protest. That is a if you go get a permit so that I can let you know ahead of time I'm gonna carry guns and I'm calling all of the media and I'm doing all this, then it's not meant to be anything but a public statement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to the average person, it looks good, it feels good, and we like that, and it creates an attraction to possibly bring people into the movement so that we can work on some real issues and real things, not just handing somebody a weapon and making them massaging their ego. Okay,
Right.
that's what
It
we got to get
definitely
clear.
has to be used to further the knowledge system and get people to see further and do more than definitely than just holding a weapon, because that can
Hmm.
be very dangerous for people that are not involved, such as yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, I guess I'm making a couple of assumptions here because I'm assuming that, like you said, you were a cadre. So that means that you were in charge. The people that were underneath you, you trusted them. You had a certain rapport. So I'm thinking of this as a regular I guess, military unit where you have a structure. You're not, everybody's not out there, willy nilly with magazines and your weapons, fully armed, so forth and so on.
Oh, I mean, well, you're right in that assumption, but the point being is, again, whereas you're talking about maybe a military operation where you know who your enemy is, versus a situation where we're going into an armed protest when we already know that our ranks have been infiltrated and we just have not been able to completely identify all of the infiltrators. Okay, in a provocateur. That is a totally different situation to
Yes,
where
yes.
you see what I'm getting at? We know we got enemies on our side holding a weapon, okay, that will turn on us. All right. Or cause, when I say turn on us, they're not going to turn and shoot us, but they're going to create a situation that causes us to get shot or go to jail, which was the whole intent. So that's the difference. That's the difference. I have to make sure those provocateurs know that you got a bullet coming from me if you
Hmm.
screw up. Don't be worried about the white folks aiming something at you. You got to worry about me.
And those are the
So
people that's hardest to keep in check and keep in line, because
yeah.
they already know that they got somebody that's backing them outside of the organization that's going whatever they need to get out of, whatever wiggle room they need, they already got
Hmm.
it set up. So, it's a scary thing. But when you talked about this, it made me remember or think back to, I believe, in Detroit, they showed up for a black woman that was walking through the justice system or something,
Hmm.
and they walked her through. But I think that that needs to happen a lot. I
Yeah,
like
that
that.
situation, that was brother Ali's formation. The Black Panther Party. I think it's the United Black Panther Party. I forget the name of his formation, but I know brother Ali. I
there
know of him. So
there are
yes.
several times that I see things in the media and the news, and I see the different black or copper skinned people standing up for things, and I always say, "Hey, Farrakhan, where you at? You need to send them people, because you need to keep some people. You got to protect at all costs. There are some people
Yes,
that
yes.
have a brain that is valuable to the movement, And I am one for the sense of protection
Oh
and
yes.
the presence being felt, but I am also with you with, okay, so but if you come with that type of force, if things don't go your way, what's your next move? Because y'all can't shoot up everybody.
Yeah, yeah, but the situation you're talking about is a security detail, and we do those here. So I'm all for that. You know what I mean? And again, I'm for armed protests in certain scenarios. Like I said, my concern is us getting too comfortable and utilizing and looking for opportunities to go out with our weapons. That is the biggest concern. That's what I'm talking about, setting ourselves up for failure. So don't say that I'm saying in general that we shouldn't do it. I said everything needs to be case by case as it applies to that. And we got to be careful about the message that we put out, because what I do know, and this is just because of being in numbers, there are certain things that a collective, unified, all in, all together type of cohesive force can do that a few individuals can't do, that you
Hmm.
will not get away with. And if you attempt to do that, and you ain't got the training, you don't have the bagging, and you don't have the discipline of the Panthers, but you try to emulate that, you're gonna get yourself killed. So
Hmm.
we got to be careful about some of the moves that are being made, and we got to make sure that the messages don't get lost in translation. That's all I'm
I
saying.
totally agree.
I also want to talk to you about the Michigan shooting and about how things are being handled there much differently than they were being handled in Wisconsin. For instance, there was no repercussion for Rittenhouse's mother, but now we see the father and mother of this 15-year-old child uh, being also held accountable, which I believe should have been done way back when. I mean, maybe if we had started holding parents responsible when we had the Sandy Hooks and the different types of shootings, maybe things would be different now. But I also think that if the shooter had been of a different persuasion, things would have also been handled much differently. I find that all of these school shooters that happen to be of a different persuasion seem to be either handled with kid gloves or we make excuses for them. This is the first time that I've seen parents actually being held accountable. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on that is number one, I agree with the parents being held accountable. What I look at based on the little bit of information that I got, and I don't have no inside track, but just a little bit of information that I received, is that what it looks like to me is you have a family, specifically a father, who has trained the son for warfare. Period. Train the son for warfare. And like I tell people all the time when it comes to training for warfare, be careful, because if you don't give me a fight, I'm going to create my own fight. The son, obviously, the kid obviously had demons that he was dealing with. And you mix that with weapons and blood, it is a bad combination. And I'm gonna use myself as an example. I grew up with weapons. My father trained me on weapons. I had my first weapon when I was 10 years old. But what did I have? I had a single shot 410 that stayed with my father, locked away at all times. The only time I got to use it when we went out and hunted. He didn't train me shooting targets of people when I was 10 years old. Like what I see in this case, where this guy is being trained to shoot targets of people. So that's
Silhouettes.
being trained for warfare. I wasn't being trained for warfare. I was being trained how to hunt and fish by a father who trained me how to hunt and fish, how to live off the land, how to eat game, how not to depend on going to the food stores. And that was the mentality. So, yes, I was learning how to shoot weapons at when I was young age. But it wasn't until I got over 18 that my dad authorized me to have a handgun. Okay, because handguns didn't have don't have any place in hunting and fishing unless you're going hog hunting. But For the most part, it had to do with long arms, which is used for hunting and fishing. Now, when someone put a post up and refer to a weapon, especially a handgun, as they baby, or give it an emotional quality, and we're talking about a young child, that ought to tell you right there something's wrong with this picture. Period. And then for an adult to basically say, "Well, don't get caught next time for doing something that has to do with
I think
the
that's the only
ammunition
reason
and
they really
weapons."
get caught up. That I don't think
Well,
if they
that and
wouldn't
they
have said
had
that, they wouldn't have went to jail.
and they had that 911 call of the dad rushing back and basically admitting before it was confirmed that, "I think this is my son." I think they was thinking that these kind of things was going to get them off the hook at that point. At that point, I think they realized
Mhm.
that they screwed up. They knew that they had an inclination that he had the gun, but that he just wasn't going to do nothing stupid. Which tells me that he probably brought the gun to school on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
Okay, and to me, I'm just going to straight up say it like this: when I was in high school, I went to a school to where it was semi rough. It was times where I carried a gun. Okay, so children in high school, believe it or not, oftentimes are gonna have guns. The gun I had did not come from my father or my parents, but at the same time, I've also, because I was grown, taught through discipline, I've gotten into fist fights and gotten my butt kicked and never pulled a gun, but had one on me. So I was taught discipline. I was taught, and very few children are taught how to be that responsible with a firearm. But I was taught at a young age with firearms that you do not ever pull a weapon that is a degree above what you're dealing with.
Mhm.
I was taught to be able to take an ass whooping. Okay, I was taught to be able to deal with that, and I did. I never let my emotions get the best of me. But that is a lot of responsibility to put on a child anyway. Okay, so I'm not even saying that that is normal. That is abnormal, actually. Okay, children should not be around handguns, training to be shooting other people, and not think and not and to not think that that's not going to create a situation to where they are looking for that type of bloodlust. Okay, this is why children are also at age 18 pushed into the military,
Mhm.
because at a young age you are primed for that type of behavior,
Yeah.
and
See,
so killing is different to you.
see, once again, I got to kind of go on my background here, and the way to me, a gun was a tool.
Yeah,
It was not a weapon. It was part of my environment. Whenever I used my gun, it was because there was money involved. There wasn't, like Mr. Williams. I reluctantly I took a few ass whoopings and never pulled a gun because it was not warranted.
right,
And also, I found out the one thing that I was taught is that I could make more money with a gun than using a gun. So therefore, like I said, it was a tool of my trade. I didn't, it wasn't something that I pulled. It wasn't something that somebody else should know that I had on me at any particular time.
right,
And if it came time to use it for protection, I guess I would have. But I also, like you said, there was a certain amount of responsibility, which I don't think that we impart to our youth today. Which
that,
well, I mean, a lot of people want to say, it's because of video games and things like that. But I think we saw more death up close and personal during the crack epidemic than we've ever seen on video games.
right. And that was when I was a teenager growing up. It was in the crack era, which is part of why I carried a gun. Dealing with the Jamaican posse in Dallas, Texas. So it was crazy. But again, at the same time,
I
You
think
have
that
to.
I think that the gaming world just exposed a different demographic to the amount of violence that those games possess. It didn't amplify it to the black community because we were used to it.
Yeah.
But for communities that were not as exposed, like the people, a lot of people that buy the music about shooting and killing and all the drug dealing to be white people. So they are getting these video games and living up to this fantasy world of what it's like to be black in some cases.
Well, it
They just
creates a
take it a little
level.
bit further. So Mr. Williams, do you believe that they will allow or try to use mental health as a defense?
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. Because in essence, why wouldn't you? They are sick in the head, all of them. Why would I
Literally.
not use my sickness in my head to hope that it would play in my favor?
Mhm.
That only makes sense to me. I think they are dysfunctional and sick in the head.
Yeah,
I really do.
I think that it's those things are just learned behaviors from that racial background, the ethnicity that's at hand because you're dealing with people they always been murderers. They've always been killers in mass numbers. This has never been like a sparingly type of thing.
Well, I just feel like in this particular scenario, it is just, and especially keep in mind because of where we stand now with social media, with so many things coming out, it is. I don't think it's the first case. It's just that, you know. Well, let me say this: it may be the first known case that we're familiar with, but the thing is because of technology, everything is so overwhelmingly out there that you cannot not prosecute because it's electronics. At this point, it just everything is being recorded. So you're gonna have situations like this now to where you have to start holding the parents accountable. That's gonna have a pro and a con as it applies to us, and we know that because remember the law is not equally dispersed to us. All right, so they always try to find reasons to take our children from us anyway. So in a situation like this, I agree with you, brother James, on this. It would have if it was black people doing this, we would have the parents would have went down from day one, going back to the trench coat mafia. If they were black, they would have arrested the parents. They probably would have arrested the grandparents. They would have kept going. So yeah, we get that, and it to me it just shows you how sick society is becoming through certain levels of desensitization, which is what the games do and the movies do and so forth. They are desensitizing a population. So that is, to me, one of the negative aspects of this. But I'm not an advocate of teaching children to be prepared for warfare. I believe you can get the same results if I wanted to teach a child how to learn how to use a weapon. You teach them how to hunt and fish. You teach them how to live off the land. You teach them by doing that. You teach them respect of the environment. You teach them respect of life. Never kill more than you're gonna eat. You start teaching them discipline when you're teaching them that way. And then the bottom line to it is, I guarantee you, a 15-year-old child that has to shoot a squirrel running up a tree in the head can outshoot a kid shooting a target sitting still at 50 feet. Let's call that what it is. So if it came down to it, the one learning how to use the weapon for the right reason that had to do it in a self-defense perspective would shoot circles around the kid that is doing it for the wrong reason, being taught it for the wrong reason. So to me, again, that's a failure on the parents. From that standpoint, I think they should be held accountable, and I do agree with the terrorism being a part of that. I mean, you might not agree with me, James, but I agree in this scenario, they should be held accountable because they created a monster. They created that monster and they kept feeding that monster. And once the signs were there that this monster was detrimental to the safety of itself as well as others, they didn't pull the trigger, pun intended, soon enough.
well, not I think not only looking at these parents, but as I've said many times before, I thought Rittenhouse's mother should have been charged with something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think that maybe, and especially when it comes to uh, people that are not of color, the one way that you can make sure, or at least try to uh, think that you have some kind of leverage is financial. It's the only way that you can do
Yeah.
it. I mean, otherwise, that's what I mean. We don't have anything, so you can't take nothing from me. But so
Yeah.
but if I start talking about taking away that house, and I you know start talking about things like that, then you know uh, we don't have the criminal justice system always allows for uh, retribution, or cash, what do they call it, not reinstitution, but anyway, where you have to pay money to either to the court or to the victim itself,
Hmm.
restitution.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, to me, this is the only way that you can deter these types of individuals and these type of crimes. So yes, I'm all for the parents, if they can possibly make something to stick on the school. I mean, I would dare to say if this was an inner city high school, the school would probably be closed down.
Hmm.
Maybe even raised. you know,
Well,
where
you definitely
salt.
have that principle fired.
Yeah, salt on the ground. It'd be like Lot's wife looking back again. So, but you know, like, it's just I don't understand how we've supposedly come so far, but our steps are so little.
Well,
I don't
I
think we've
say,
come that far.
well, I want to say, I say this often is that what I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is that we tend to celebrate in the small steps of victory, not recognizing that for every step forward you make, you have to continue to defend that particular step as well as you make new steps. Because otherwise, what happens is you start finding out that the victories that you made can be taken back away from you. See, we have to, and I say this all the time, we have to recognize that we are on a battlefield. And in doing so, the fight is not over. And we have to know that we are at war. We have to know that these are the conditions we're dealing with. And so, therefore, our fight must continue to move forward. We can't get happy and feel like, oh, we've strived because we had a black president or this and that, and feel like that, those things made a difference because there was, and then not even get me started on that, how detrimental that was actually to us. But from the stance of knowing that we have to continue to fight and fight even harder the day after. Our fight doesn't get easier; it needs to get tougher. We need more of us. And just going back again, just real quick on the Rittenhouse thing, we've had Panthers get arrested for carrying weapons over crossing weapons over state lines without having to ever use it. Okay, so that just lets you know how the law works. There's two types of laws. There's a law for them and a law for us. Okay, so they came after us just for having a weapon going over state lines. So yeah, I completely agree when you say that something should have been done in regards to the parents' accountability. Not obviously like the other case we're talking about, but yeah, I can see how, you know, if nothing else, child protective custody should have made a visit to the house to see what else they can find, to see how he's been trained to use his weapon because he was effective in his self defense. So yeah.
Miss Sims, I see you're doing a lot of listening here. Anything you would like to ask Brother Williams, or contribute?
Well, I'm listening to get to know Mr. Williams. I looked him up on the internet, etc., and listen to the conversation. And he's very wise in his judgment, and reminds me of our era, Mr. King, when the Black Panthers were out there and they had their guns visibly. They were in their
Black
French
Beret.
thing, blacks and things like that, and they stood. I mean, they stood in front of buildings and whatever, and they started out as a protection, as Mr. Williams is kind of saying. And these two may not have even been born then, but I think he's very wise and he's thought things through in regards to what he's talking about, what he's dealing with, and he knows what has to happen in regards just within his circle of people, yeah, that's with him and agree with him. And it kind of reminded me of Dr. King's day, that there was training before they went to protest at these counters and things like that. So you have to think of all sides. But at the same time, I kind of feared for him and anybody else that's out there, like at the courthouse, as he said, you visibly out there. And that also says to me that at some point you're willing to give up your life because you don't know what's
Hmm.
going to happen. You're willing to die for others. And that's how I said, always use wisdom and good judgment in things. And at some level, we're all connected in one way or the other. So he's very interesting, Mr.
Let me
Williams is.
say
And
thank you, Miss Sims. Let me say this, and this is one of the things that I don't get to say often too much to the public, is that I train Panthers to recognize that to die for the people is good, but to live for the people is even greater, and that
right,
it is
right,
harder to live for the people than it is to die for
yeah,
the people. Reason being,
right,
going back to the level of discipline I said I had to have when I'm in the middle of a fist fight, but not only a fist fight with one person, but I've had multiple people jump me while they
right,
had a gun
right,
before and did not pull it. The level of discipline that it takes for you to be able to recognize that you have to be able to be here the next day and the day after for the future generation, instead of doing something to where you feel like you're going to set it off and be a martyr, so to speak, and call yourself going down that path. It takes a lot more discipline and a lot more strength for us to be able to stand fast and hold our position, hold the line, and live for the people.
right.
And that's what I teach my members.
Right. And one of the part of the conversations when you all were talking in regard, I think the youth of today don't know how to fist fight. They're scared of each other. So the first thing they do will fight. They're not like you and James were
Well,
taught, to fist fight. I
yeah.
mean, there are
Well,
different ways of
Panthers are
getting
taught how to
your
fist fight.
advantage. Right, right. And I think the youth today, because the way they've been indoctrinated, is the gun is the thing that's going to get you through.
Mhm.
They're scared, in a way, they're cowards because they won't fist fight each
Yeah.
other because they know they're going to get hurt. I mean,
Well,
it hurts
when
to
you
get
when you go to the penitentiary, you learn how to fist fight because you, you know that,
No doubt, no doubt.
that, you know, I mean that that becomes part of your survival kit. you,
Right,
you
right.
so if you put yourself in a situation, then you should be able to handle that situation. Otherwise, you have no business being in it. But that's a different conversation for a different time.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but
yeah.
I've never put myself in a situation where I didn't feel confident that I would come out on the other side. Uh, it might have been braggadocious or whatever, but that's the way I live. So you know, but and I understand what you say. When I mean, I have nieces, nephews that still live on Martin Luther King Boulevard, and like you say, it's not a matter of uh, showing that you know how to protect yourself. It's I'm going to run in the house and get a gun or get a weapon, and you know whatever happens. But I do think that um, this year has shown us, if nothing else, that we have not um, overcome for one of when it comes to, especially when I'm talking about our generation, Miss Sims. We're still singing sad songs, eating fried chicken, and talking about we shall overcome. Well, that those days are over with. It's time, to for some action. Unfortunately, we have, I think, gone past that point where we can actively participate, but we do need to show that we have the backs of Dr. Casey and other young people that are striving to not only support Black heritage, but make a difference. Uh,
Right. It goes
so
back to what I've said in the past that our generation didn't pass down the knowledge and the best way and things that were positive in our struggling and whatever. We didn't pass it down
well,
the
not
way
not
it should
only
have been.
not only
And in supporting Mr. Williams and the new Black Panthers, we as a people have to know the difference between him and the ones that are out there just carrying the gun and doing now to see where he's coming from, where his thinking is. We've got to learn the ones that are, especially our generation, have to learn to know the difference and to recognize the difference in behaviors and people and their thoughts before we support them, because we can end up supporting the wrong people in regards to carrying forth with what Mr. Williams is talking about.
yeah, we have to, to get away from the Jesse Jacksons and the Slick Al Sharptons, and get some new blood in, so uh, go ahead, Dr. Casey. I saw a big smile across your face there when I mentioned Sharpton and some of the other
Cause you know how I feel.
carpetbaggers. Well,
You know,
I've dealt with them since the '60s. So I mean, if you
I'm just trying to figure out what they didn't did. What have they done that
they
that have
raped
been very progressive?
the black community. That's what they did.
It's almost all the everybody that got a reverend in front of their name at this point. I mean, like it's one of those hard things. That's why even though I'm an ordained minister, that is not what I lead with.
But
And
once
that is
again,
half the reason why I do Speaking Freedom TV for free. I got a lot of clauses here to try to protect that narrative.
Well, I
Um,
would say here again, those people that you speak of, they served a purpose and they had followers and
they
people
didn't
that
do a
listened to them.
purpose. They didn't. That
if you
Listen,
they
I mean,
if
had
they
you have
served a
Reverend in front of
purpose.
your name, if you have Reverend in front of your name as a 74-year-old, I'm looking at you three times. Once, and then I'm gonna make sure that you don't have your hand in my pocket.
And
exactly.
here again, it's like I said to Mr. Williams, even back then, you have to know who you're going to follow, who you're going to follow. You have to listen to where they're coming from, their thoughts and whatever, and choosing who you're going to follow
I don't want to
and
follow
do it
anybody. I
like that.
want to lead. How come I
Well, you
Right.
can
can't be a
lead too.
leader?
Here again, you got to be a leader, and then other people are going to have to. They're going to be checking you out. You got to know who you're going to,
I
who's
ain't
going to
Well,
mad
be
at
you,
you.
who you're going to choose to lead you.
I ain't
well,
mad at you. I can
let me
pass
say
the
this.
test. Give me any test you want. I ain't mad at you.
Let me say this. The Panther Party believes that what we do is we go out and show observation through participation. Our thing has always been that we're showing the people how to step up. Because what the problem we run into, and I actually gave a show on this last night about leadership, is that this whole thing about us falling or following somebody is a problem because what happens is it basically is called turning over your power, giving your power away. We want people to we want all people that want better things to hold themselves accountable for what's going on. And in doing and in following anybody, what you're following in terms of being progressive, you're following my steps. If I'm able to stand up to racism, I want you to stand up to racism. So what
You
you're
may do it
following is
differently, but it's still standing up.
you're following my example. Don't follow me, followed the example of standing up and making a difference and holding yourself accountable and holding that system accountable that is attempting to oppress you. That is what we should be following. We should be following ourselves to be liberated and fight for oppression. But don't put your faith in somebody that they're going to do the work for you. That is the
Right.
wrong type of leadership, and that is part of the problem that we're talking about. It and that dynamic about the reverend and part of the aspect of the church. And keep in mind, y'all, if y'all go back and study COINTELPRO, one of the aims and objectives of COINTELPRO was to prevent the rise of the Black Messiah. What was referred to as a Black Messiah was somebody that could inspire the people to action. So what's not known to a lot of people was the aspect of being able to prevent the rise of a Black Messiah is that they created false messiahs.
Mm-hmm.
Creating a false messiah is how you prevent real messiahs from being recognized. And what is a false messiah? Somebody that wants you to put all your blessings into them and let them do the work and you just sit back.
And that's where a lot of people in church fall into that's why it's a sheep, the sheeple,
Yep,
because
sheepish.
you're
That's
just being
exactly right.
led to the slaughter by
Yep,
who's ever in charge. You're not doing no leg work, you're not looking up nothing, you're not researching, you don't know about history, no nothing. All you know is whatever somebody else told you, and you just gonna follow along to get along,
yep,
go along to get along. I'm surviving, I'm making it, the Lord is coming, all of those things. And then to go back to something that Miss Sims said earlier, she talked about not passing down the positive information, but the negative information to do more for us than just learning about what people did that worked. Show me what didn't work, because if you show me what
Right.
didn't work, my
You're
mind
right.
is not the average mind. I'm strategizing every conversation that I have. I'm learning so I can know, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to move? And what do I tell the people that tap into me, that tune into me for leadership on how to be better leaders? Because I'm only after the leaders. I don't want none of the sheeple. I don't want none of the people that's looking for somebody
Right.
that
Right.
I want the people that are in leadership positions, because my
Yeah.
mind works a little bit, like it's very
You're
intricate.
right. You're
And
right. And I thank you for that, for calling me out and pointing that out to me. I should have reframed it. We should have passed on the good, the bad, and the ugly
the
in regard.
ugly is what's gonna help us more than the
Yeah.
good, because the
Yeah.
things that
Yeah.
work
I
then is
put
the
it all
things that
together. I
they
shouldn't have done
allowed to
that.
work.
Yeah. You're right. I
They
put it all
allowed
together. I shouldn't
certain
have done
stuff to
that. Yeah.
work. So if
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
we
You're
only know
right.
what they allowed y'all to do, what they allowed to go through, what they, because they allowed it, believe, trust me, from the top to the bottom, the things that have happened now hasn't always been because of force. Because everybody that
right.
was black leaders, they took out. They were doing that to make sure that nobody led. So even for me, this is probably the most on politics I ever talk about publicly, because I feel like I'm the strategic mind that's gonna help unravel some shit. And the only way for me to be effective is to stay not hidden, but stay protected in such a way to where I can give the information, and then I can help people without putting myself in direct harm.
Yeah. And I thought about Mr. Williams as he said regarding, he used the word in the terms of was talking about the Black Messiah. And I thought about that. It's kind of similar to my thinking. Oh, I always look for the power behind the power, because that's who's really running the show. And
Hmm.
sometimes the power behind the power, your Black Messiah, doesn't have to say a word, just the actions.
Right.
Just
Right.
watch their actions. Yeah. And that's
So,
how I think that's how this time when that shooting was in Michigan, the people went to the power behind the power. They went direct. They knew who the power behind the power was, and they went directly to it.
Well, let's kind of wrap it up for the evening. Miss Sims, I think we're gonna have to get you a pillow here if we stay on too much longer. So, uh, but, but we
We
appreciate your
got to remember,
time.
I'm still recovering. I'm still
Uh,
recovering from a lot of different
hey,
things.
look, Look,
Thank you for being on.
only me and Mr. Williams are out here in California. We know the rest of you people have a life and
Yeah,
whatnot. So
yeah. And
thank you so much.
I did want to hear Mr. Williams get to know him more because I went back and I listened to the recording of the last time that you and Dr. Casey and I think Mr. Williams had a conversation, and so that stimulated my thinking more to get to know uh, this young man better.
Yeah, well, Dr. Casey usually stays here with us, and she's a stalwart. So vaccinated or not, she's my lady. So you know, long, long as I
As
got
long as
it,
she doesn't get too close.
long,
As long as she
hey,
doesn't get too close.
Hey,
long,
I
long,
wear a
long,
mask and I got COVID test, so I'm gonna be tested before I go around
hey,
anybody. But I keep my mask on because
That's
I ain't
right.
fooling
Yeah.
with y'all vaccinations either, because I think y'all
But she
contagious.
lives in a cocoon. She lives in a
I
hey,
cocoon, so
look
she's
at
well protected.
I
look
think
at
all y'all vaccinated people are contagious, so I am kind of leery about being around y'all as well.
I think the
well,
same thing about
well,
you
well,
now. How's that?
well,
Y'all got that thing in you already.
yeah. Uh, yeah, so
Well,
hey,
yeah.
but as long as I got a podcast, you got to see. It doesn't matter. So
Hey, I love it here. I love it here. I love to be surrounded by my elders because I'm here to learn. And I do have a very strong opinion about things that I've learned already. And the knowledge and the information. I read a lot of books. I probably got over 180 books that I've read over the last 3 or 4 years. So I take in information so that I can learn how to use it to help other people, and I love this environment. I especially love being on with Mr. Williams because he's Black Panther, and I'm over here thinking like, damn, now I need to join the Black Panther Party because I think I need to join. I need to sign up. But I love this environment. It again, it reminds me of Miss Sims. Remind me of fussing with my grandma about political things. So it's refreshing.
Well, remember when you look at James and myself, you're looking at yourself because if you live long enough, you're gonna get age. You're gonna get old. You're gonna be
Miss
us. You're
Sims,
gonna be
Miss
us.
Sims, yo, the way y'all think, you preferably I don't think my goal is to never be like nobody that I meet. My goal is to always be the best version of myself. So my
Well,
aspirations is to get older, but definitely not to necessarily be like y'all because y'all
I
thinking
just say
isn't
be
in
like
alignment.
us. You're just visibly looking at the gray hair and the beard,
Oh, I'm looking forward
the
to that. I
cracks in the
think growing
body.
old is a privilege. That's a privilege.
That's what I mean. You don't have to act like it, or whatever. It's just the cycle of life.
no,
I love it.
hey, I'm kind of like you, Dr. Casey. All of these years are gifts because I did nothing to make sure that I lived this long. You know, I didn't eat right. I didn't go to the, you know, I did everything that you wasn't supposed to do. I did it, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. So now I'm just now now I'm just trying to like live out these last few years. Hope I can spread some knowledge and hope I can be introduced to people that can maybe teach me some things that that I should have learned many years ago. But I've always been of the persuasion that no matter how old I am, I can always learn from someone,
Yeah, yeah.
even if
And
it's a child.
I have no idea how you and I met, how our paths crossed. I really don't know, Mr. King. I really don't.
Hey, I go everywhere. I mean, if you had to point to where me and Dr. Casey first met, I probably couldn't tell you that either. So yeah, I go a lot of places looking for people that I believe that can enrich my environment. Uh, Brother Williams, any final thoughts for us tonight?
Yeah, I want to say this and leave us with this. The avoidance of conflict only stores it up for future events, which basically means that if we don't involve ourselves in being active in fighting for our liberation and fighting against oppression and just fighting to make it a better world, then all we're doing is allowing things to be that much more worse for the next generation. We owe it to the next generation so that they will have a planet that they can benefit, they can benefit from all of the things that we benefited from. And I like to also let people know that as we look at fighting oppression, fighting capitalism, fighting imperialism, these are the things that are leading toward the destruction of the environment, the which is destroying the atmosphere, creating, messing up the ecosystem. So the type of things that I'm talking about are imperative that we step up to the plate, because if we don't, then all we're doing is doing a disservice to humanity and the world anyway. So this is the good fight. This is the battlefield we need to be on. We need more people to jump in and do their part and step up to the plate. That's all power to the people.
Well, thank everyone for listening. We'd like to thank our
Yeah.
audience, and we look forward to talking to everyone again next week, right here on To an Imperfect Union. Have a great week, everyone.
Peace and love. Good night.
All right.